Good afternoon, everybody. As it's 4 o'clock, we'll get the meeting started. I'd like to advise everyone that this afternoon the meeting is being recorded on audio, and I've been advised that the microphones can stay on their green light setting, please, and you don't need to pick them up unless you wish to project to the people in the audience, but for the purposes of recording, they're fine where they are. I'd like to remind everybody that all people attending the meeting are to be respectful and considerate towards each other and other people attending the meeting this afternoon. For the purposes of the recording, which is a relatively new change to these Hobart committee workshops, elected members should wait for the chairperson to announce them before speaking. And I'd like to request that all mobile devices are turned off or put on silent, please. Thank you. So present this afternoon we have Councillor Bill Harvey, Councillor Ryan Posselt, Councillor John Kelly, Lord Mayor Anna Reynolds, Alderman Louise Bloomfield, Councillor Louise Elliott and Alderman Zuko, with apologies from the Deputy Lord Mayor and Councillor Lohberger. So I move to item 1 of the agenda this afternoon, which is the acknowledgement of country. I'd like to recognise the deep history of Lutruwita, Tasmania, and recognise the Muwinina people who were the original custodians of the land and didn't survive colonisation. I'd like to acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people and recognise the value of continuing Aboriginal knowledge and cultural practice in Nipaluna, Hobart. Item 2 of the agenda this afternoon is the confirmation of minutes. Would anyone like to move that for me?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Harvey. So I'll declare that we put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Item 3 on the agenda this afternoon is confirmation of supplementary items. There being none, we'll move through to item 4. Thank you, CEO. Item 4 on the agenda this afternoon is indications of conflicts of interest. Does any elected member wish to indicate an interest in any item appearing on the agenda this afternoon? No, that's no indications of conflicts of interest for the workshop this afternoon. Item 5, transfer of agenda items. Are there any items proposed for transfer either on the open or closed agenda this afternoon?
I wasn't, sorry Chair, I was just going to ask, did we want to do the item 8.1 earlier? Did we have a guest, I think, for that?
Just a matter of how long you think the other items might take. I'm happy to wait if that's not going to be
What was that, sorry?
I'd be happy to start moving it forward.
I think some of the officer reports may have a bit of discussion. I'm not sure. What do you think, CEO?
It's always hard to judge.
Yeah, okay. Well, perhaps then I'll move that we do move 8.1 to just after the reports of the special committees.
Okay, so that's moving 8.1 to after the reports of the special committees, which I believe is after 6.2, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all those in favour of moving that item further up due to the guest speaker being here today, say aye.
Aye.
Any dissent? Great, that's moved up then after the reports of the special committee. Okay, reports of special committee. The first one is the Climate Sustainability and Biodiversity Committee. Did someone want to move that, please?
So moved, Chair.
Councillor Posselt has moved that item. Was there any comments before we put that? No comments? All right, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. And the second report from committees is the Place and Wellbeing Committee. Can someone move that item?
Okay, moved.
Moved by Councillor Harvey. And any comments or questions before we put that? All those in favour?
Aye.
Great, thank you. So we'll move to our guest speaker. if you'd like to come up to the table.
I might introduce it first. if that's
That'd be great. I'll just hand over to the CEO to introduce the item.
Thanks, Mr. Amati. So, by way of introducing this item today, and obviously the elected members had a chance to read the report. So, the Trees for the Future Fund was established in 2022, and it was certainly driven in a large way by Mr. Amati and his desire to leave a lasting legacy for the city, particularly around the urban greening that is occurring. We've been talking with Mr. Marty and staff in recent months around the fund and the fact that we've received very few donations, negligible number of donations since the initial donation that we received. So it's not delivering what we hoped the trust would. So we're putting forward a suggestion as to how we might re-enlivened to create a philanthropic body that can actually deliver for the city, and Mr. Marty's agreed to come in to talk to us about his motivation in setting up the trust in the first case, but also probably what we want to do moving forward. So.
Thank you very much, CEO. Look, I think we're just about marking the 10th anniversary of our involvement with this. So we started out when the Lord Mayor was the head of the Parks Committee, and there was a discussion about the possibility of creating a street tree strategy, and we were very taken by that. At that stage we looked up on Melville Street in West Hobart, and we were very happy to volunteer to be the first pilot project for that. And in fact those trees are now doing rather well some years later after we got the street tree strategy was adopted, and we gradually worked through the process of creating this trust that we thought would be helpful. We plan to leave a bequest. As somebody just observed, we're still in rather good health, so the bequest may be a little time coming. It could happen on the way home, but let's hope it doesn't. But that's, that'll be a sizable amount of money, and hopefully that will still be of use to you to increase the speed with which we get this urban tree canopy up to the 40% level. We work very closely with the council, with various officers, with the Lord Mayor, with Ruby Wilson particularly, and with other officers on the legal side particularly, and on the communication side as we launched the Our City Canopy project. And I might say that even today as we walk around the city we get a great deal of interest from people saying, how's that going? And I say, well, we need more money, and they say, is it tax deductible? And of course it isn't. And that's a big inhibition. So I think it's great that we're talking about widening the scope of the trust to enable a DGR status to be obtained. I do note from some of the comments of the CEO in his report that we would have a committee still much like the one we have for the Trees for the Future Trust, which would be made up of city officers. I think that's fine, but I do think we need to widen the involvement of the people of the city in the governance of this as well. So especially if it's going to end up with a sizeable fund like the Melbourne Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation there now has $276 million in it. And so of course the income that flows off that enables the city to do some very broad things, some of which you may agree with, some of which you may not. You may have a different scope that you want to work around this trust or this fund or this foundation, or however you frame it in the end. But I think it's great that it has the capacity to do multiple things, one of which, obviously from our point of view, we still want to have that capacity to improve the urban greening in the city and urban areas surrounding. So that in short is, we're still just as motivated, just as caring about this as we've ever been. I've been involved in tree planting my whole life. I've probably been involved now in the planting of multi-millions of trees across agricultural areas in Western Australia, in public land across Western Australia as well as other places in the world. So we're still very passionate about seeing this target of 40% urban greening created for all the economic, social, health and other benefits that come from having a really healthy urban canopy. Any questions?
You You got Greening Australia involved in this. What was the purpose of having them involved?
Simply because we needed to have a second party and it needed to have like-minded interests, if you like, in case this was folded or the council was taken over by, went into an amalgamation and could no longer be the entity that was going to be the beneficiary. We needed to have a second beneficiary. That was the rationale for that.
So you're happy to drop them and look at a local organisation?
Well, this was something driven by your legal people. I didn't have anything to say about the Greening Australia. That was something that they selected. So
Yeah.
I'd imagine yes is the answer to that.
Yep.
Sorry, Councillor.
Alderman Penfield?
Hi. With this, you're okay with the broadening of the scope, because my understanding was that the original intent was specifically the canopy, and now it'll be the canopy and other things.
I think what we'd be happy with is knowing that the same financial structures we're going to stay in place, so that you'll see in the CEO's report there are some highlight items like in the investment committee won't be able to sort of arrange for investments to cost them more than 1% per annum, for example. That they'll only be able to spend income, they won't be able to spend capital. Those things for us are really important, because the legacy that we want to leave is an 80-year legacy, which is the life of the trust.
But I'm talking not about how much is spent. I'm talking about the scope of what is spent it on, which I thought that your intent was that this would be spent on the revenue that's generated, that's over and above the initial capital outlay. Would be spent on things other than tree canopies, because that's kind of where we got stuck, I think, with the definition to getting the tax deductible status. It had to be a range of things. So it'll be, if we do that, it'll be trees and a couple of other things.
I get that.
And you're fine with that. That's why
I'd hope that it was still possible for us, because we've left money at the moment in our wills. It's been left to the trees for the future. Which I imagine will be one of the streams under this wider organisation. If it's not, that becomes a bit complex from our point of view. For example, if you said, "Oh, you're leaving the money and it's going to the Lord Mayor's Trust and we'll spend it however we like," that's a bit difficult.
This is why I'm asking.
That's a bit difficult
because it's quite material. When you have money left with an intent, that we have to respect the intent. But in this particular instance, the only way we'll be able to set this up, therefore, will be to get other money quickly in, so that we can actually meet the scope of all the different elements. Because at the moment, the bulk of the money will be over one stream.
From us, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But hopefully not from others. If it's it's got DGR.
So what you're really saying is that you'd like to have the money that you have supplied to be quarantined to the scope of what you would like, though we have to actually broaden it overall.
Correct.
And the other income will have to go. Now, is that going to be a possible thing?
Yeah,
because
thanks through you, Chair. Yeah, so that's the intent, is that at this stage, the way the report's written is that our city canopy would be recommended to be one of the themes, and it will be really for the council to determine what it sees as the important themes for it in terms of the rest of the fund. And I've just put what the current Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation in Melbourne, for instance, what their themes are. So.
No, I appreciate that. It's just that we have here, when I've had experience of other types of intent, it's almost like a trustee. It's like you have to effectively recognise the original intent, and you can't change that unless you were to agree to that. And that's why I'm asking, because even if we supply a greater scope so we can get tax deductibility, the additional monies will go to whatever we choose, but this money will still need to go to that initial scope. And that's why I'm being very clear about that, because I actually think that's a very material part of this.
Could I just say that I'd hope that people in the wider community, if they wish to earmark money for the use of urban greening, and that was their specific intent in giving money to it, I would hope that there could be streaming, as we've done, for example, with TMAG. We went through a very lengthy process there, a similar thing that we've done here, whereby they've got buckets that people can put money into. It's very similar to what you're talking about here, but you can say I'm putting it into this bucket, which might be contemporary art, or we're putting it into this bucket, which is colonial furniture, or we look at putting this into, botanical stuff, whatever. And I think that's really great that people can then earmark the money, and it's still got DGR status.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It was establishing that we can both have the scope yet quarantine, and I wasn't aware that we could because I hadn't done one before like that.
Right. And most people haven't, I have to say. This was very new in Hobart. It's taken us years. And there have been a lot of legal people, poring over this stuff along the way.
Yeah, no, I've been around where people have tried to morph and alter the original intent, which is something that I just leave the board. I just don't do it. So that was the first question, and what's the other part? You talked also about having additional people from the public on the board, which I actually think is a great idea, but how would we pick them? What was your intent there?
Well, I think the same thing that we've seen at a place like TMAG with its foundation, for example, is that there are people in the community who have pretty good hearts, and many of them may be people who have a background in investment, or they may be people who have a background in law, or they may be really useful people in the community who want to associate their name with something like a Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation. They want to be seen to be the guiding hand of that from a public point of view, and I think that's what you want to do, because they have also connections to a network of people who might be interested in either giving money in real time or leaving bequests or whatever. And that's been part of the success, I think, of the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation in Melbourne over this last 100 years it's been running, and that's why they've got $276 million sitting in capital in the fund, because that's the sort of network they've developed over all that time. And to be, for example, one of the guys that's on, I noticed this morning, I went through all the members of that that board, and people like the guy who heads the Future Fund for Australia is on it. Not even as chair, he's just there, sort of as a member of this board, because it's a prestigious position to hold in Melbourne. Just like it is to be on the board of the foundation of the South Australian Art Gallery, for example. It's very prestigious. They've got a lot of money sitting in their foundation because of the connections they've created by doing that, with involving people of substance within their society.
Okay, so Sia, would be okay being able to establish something in that, because I think at the moment we've only established that it would be internal.
Yeah, well, this is for workshopping. So if the council's of the view that they would like us to explore externals being on the committee, then we can certainly do that. Question for me: would you want to have elected member representation on it as well, or just purely externals?
So I don't think any of the other funds have elected members.
They don't. No, you're correct. Yeah, it's purely the people from external on that part of it, and internal governance, as you pointed out in your report, still need to have relevant officers involved.
Have you finished your questions on?
I think they're the bulk of my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. We'll move on to Councillor Posso.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, first of all, Mr. Armani, for your generosity to the city and its future. It's great that we see this in Australia, because it's a culture of philanthropy in other countries that we don't have here, and we tend to lean on the taxpayer a little bit more. My question is probably more for the CEO than yourself, but you may have some wisdom for us. CEO, is it possible to build sufficient flexibility into a future trust that allows for new stream creation based on philanthropists' wishes? So if we set up something with 4 different categories, and someone says, actually, no, I'm really passionate about X, Y, and Z, and it's not in there, can we set the rules up to reflect that?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't see a reason why you couldn't. I can certainly take that under advisement, but I would think you could.
Yeah, I think it's important that it is flexible, so that when we have another Mr. Armani come in and want to donate to line painting in the city, that we can do that, should they be sufficiently passionate about that. But I think the advice that you've given us today is very helpful. I don't support elected member involvement beyond the decision to establish it. I think it should be run at arm's length to politicians. And anything we can do to get more philanthropic funds into the city, I think, is a great thing. So thanks for your work ongoing in this space.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, possibly the CEO or appropriate person. Just off aside, and thank you for your presentation. It's been great in your work you're doing. Just to put us in the frame here with the canopy itself, is it possible that we're sort of updated on that percentage of what it is? Because the latest report says it wasn't a 2% decline, I think, in the 22 report. and all that. And I just think it keeps it front and centre in us. Like this tree canopy thing in my mind is a really big issue for us to address, and that on the dashboard, along with finances maybe. I just think it can be easily parked on the side
Yep.
and we forget about it a bit. But
Yeah, no, absolutely we can, and there's been a recent audit done, which so if that information hasn't been passed on, we'll make sure that it is.
So one of the things that struck me, if I may, through you, Chair, is that we were delighted when the first sort of, I think it was satellite audit that was done. We went from 16.9% of urban tree canopy to, I think it was in the high 20s, which I was delighted about. You know, we were only trying to get to 40, that was a lot easier target. But what concerned us at the time was the shrinkage in private land. So, in fact, the sort of holdings in public land are relatively stable because a lot of those have been planted and we're still doing planting and so on. But private land is a really significant issue as we do more development and we allow people to bulldoze trees in the process. My own view is that we should be having some real consideration in the way that we do this to say if you're going to pull down 10 trees to build your new house, then we'd like you to make a donation of some sort to enable us to plant 10 trees somewhere else so that we maintain our tree canopy. It's not very expensive to put in new trees. It's very expensive when you actually lose a tree that might be 100 years old. They're valuable things. It's one of the very few assets that you have as a council that are actually increasing in value every year. About $1,000 per year for every tree you have in the city. That's about how much added value there is in the growth they put on every year. You think of the number of trees you've got, and you've done an audit, so you know that number. If you put 1,000 on the end, it might even be higher than that. This is my data's a bit older, so it might be more like 1,500 or so. For every single year that goes by, your asset base is growing.
and another point too, if I may, Chair,
Sure.
make a general comment. In our rates increases, we've actually hit people with spare land now, and I'm such a person who has spare land and planted a lot of trees, and I find this is a huge, as I know there's a lot of other people in the municipality who have a spare block of land or a double block, to be hit with the extra rates, penalised now. That's why people are putting these blocks back onto land. Now I know there's the argument that we might say we need more housing, of course we acknowledge that, but there is a valid case in place for these blocks within the urban areas, especially the dense ones, to have these pockets of trees. And we've hit up people now with those rates increases, and it's something that we've got to really look at the next review of our rates. That one hand here we're saying, oh, let's do all this great stuff, and it's good, but we're going to penalise the same bunch of people who've got land who are growing trees, because it's just real hard hit, and just enough to sway people on the edges to, oh, geez, do a sell or do a develop it and all that. So it's something we should be considering a bit more. And I just think too, keeping this front and centre with the tree canopy is always a good prompt. I see too a few of our DAs that come through, we see whole units being developed and there's absolutely no requirement for plants.
Well, I mean, you just have to drive out to the airport and look at Mornington. I mean, really and truly, how do you approve that? I mean, I'm sorry, that's from my point of view.
Well, under the scheme...
And not that you've approved it, I'm saying how could any council approve it?
We just approved to place up in top of Giblin Street, there's a lot of units, and we put a recommendation that they do put some greenery in there. And it wasn't
recommendation is not usually...
I know, and there's no reckon they might, but the bottom line is there was no requirement to do that, which I just find staggering too. So,
anyway, I think we sound like we're on a similar page.
Chair.
Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, look, I'm in two minds about the urban tree canopy versus urban vegetation. And I think we need all of the above.
We do.
And just calling it the urban tree canopy, I think is too narrow. That I'm more interested in nature strip gardening, where you eliminate grass, and then you're eliminating mowing, and then you're providing potentially more deep-rooted plants for more moisture content and biodiversity for whatever wants to live in that nature strip garden. So I think there needs to be a flexibility within this program to allow other urban greening things to be included, including water-sensitive urban design with appropriate plantings and that sort of thing, rather than just urban tree canopy. And tree canopy implies we're going to plant trees. And in some places we've got too many trees. we don't want to plant more trees in some places. We want to put more vegetation in some places. So I think the flexibility needs to be built into this. And I think within the, if there's a board, there needs to be some expertise on that board as well. And I'm sure the council have expertise. So I'm not sure about having a high-profile board of CEOs and philanthropists and all the rest of it.
That's really the financial side.
Okay, but the management of this needs to be done by the council experts and have that flexibility to, if this does build up a significant fund, and the interest will be used on doing things. So what you're talking about is having a fund that earns interest, and the interest is used to cover the costs of things. And that's why Melbourne's got, what, quarter of $1 billion or something. And that gives them a few $1 million or a number of millions of dollars to spend. But there's also a point where maybe you should spend that money because there's some big things that need to get done so we can hit these targets early rather than stretch it out over a long period of time. But that's another problem for the future if this fund did grow into something significant. But I'd like it to have a certain level of flexibility to allow other things to occur, not just the planting of urban street trees.
It sounds to me, through your chair, that the CEO is already flagging that there could be these multiple buckets, and I don't see any reason why. For example, in the Melbourne case, they've got a very strong climate and urban diversity. I can't remember the wording of it, but they've got something about that.
Climate justice, economic justice, housing
whatever.
justice.
So, and UN sustainability guidelines and so on, they have mentioned in there as well, which I know is something dear to you. And I've got no problem at all with us thinking about planting vegetation, but my sense is that we need both, as you were saying, and my feeling would be that it'd be great if there was someone else who wanted to put their hand up in real time right now to say either I'm going to leave a substantial bequest to do that, or they want to give it to you in current terms to say here it is and you spent, and they can say to you, by the way, you don't have to spend it the way that the Amatis are doing it, or that the city set itself up in some respects. This can be spent in real time, and I think that's something to be encouraged, absolutely.
And there are a lot of competing organisations looking at bequests, and everyone's raising funds.
Of course, because none of us have got enough in terms of our institutions.
And that's an interesting point when it comes to philanthropy, with the argument that if we go down the philanthropy path like they have in the States, which is really strong, does that also take the pressure off federal, state, local councils to spend money as well, to allocate money?
Interestingly, in places like New South Wales, where they made a contract with their people, they said we're going to plant 1 million trees in a very short space of time, and everyone went, oh really? This is state government said they would do that. My word, they did it. They did it in advance of the promise that they'd made, and they planted 1 million trees. That's a lot of trees, and kept them alive.
Yeah, that's the point. There's no point planting anything if it dies, because we don't.
One of the things we did when I was involved in what's now the Trillion Tree movement, where we planted literally millions of trees, and go out onto somebody's, sand belt out in the middle of the wheat belt, which is turning to dust because it's just the desert is moving in and in. We'd plant 500,000 trees on one of those properties, and we'd change the microclimate. So, and then of course underneath that would come natural vegetation would grow, birds would come back, the life would come back, the rain would fall on their land, not on the next door neighbours who didn't have any trees. And so people going, oh, this is pretty amazing, this changes the environment. So I think there's all sorts of flow-ons that happen over time as once we start to see this happening. And if people are talking about the various layers of the canopy, that's fantastic. You have to have a canopy first to have something underneath it.
And that also takes us in, I'm going a bit on here, but that also takes us into the nature repair type stuff rather than plantation. It's got to be diversity rather than
and so we also used to plant minuscule trees and make sure they stayed alive, because if you plant little ones, they've got a much better chance of growing than if you put really big ones in. But that's in places like rivulets and those sorts of things. You really want to be thinking about lots of them, as we do, as Ruby does. I think one of her favourite sayings is right tree, right place, and I think she's absolutely spot on.
Thank you for that. Is there any other comments before I move to Councillor Postelt's second round?
Sorry.
That really quick one, Chair. You just raised tree protections on private land, and I just wanted to ask the CEO if we've made any progress on tree protection and private land, which was something that we were looking at.
Yeah, look, we're still working through it. Kingborough have abandoned, I think, their work that we were waiting to see the outcome of that. So I think we're refocusing our investigation on the back of that advice.
Thank you. Yeah, so we are hoping to try and provide. There are other jurisdictions, such as New South Wales, where if you want to chop down a big tree on your property, you need to seek permission to do so.
150 millimetres.
That's the one.
Ku-ring-gai Council went since I was a child.
Yes.
So this is like 70 years ago. They had protections over trees.
That's right. So hopefully we can get something in that space for Mr. Marty.
It's one of the most valuable parts of Sydney, and that's the other thing that happens when you plant trees. Real estate values rise, which means your rateable values rise, which means your income rises.
Sorry, I thought the Lord Mayor was going to speak.
I was just going to add in that we are preparing. There is an urban greening strategy that went out for consultation in the community earlier this year, and I presume it won't be too long before that comes back to a workshop, which will look at all of these, the underlying policies and the things we do, and the potentially public land, private land. So I'm expecting that will come back to us within a couple of months as well.
Sorry, I just wanted to get a point of clarification from you because of the questions that have been asked today. You were asked about the undergrowth and other types of vegetation. The way you structured your answer, I'm going to assume, that's why I want to be corrected or not, that you would prefer that the funds you supply will be uniquely for tree canopy, and if we want to do other things with undergrowth and things like that, that'll be another bucket from somebody else, different donors.
Correct.
Good. I just wanted to make sure that was clear
Yep.
because it was getting a little bit...
Jenny and I are passionately involved and have been in the planting of trees for the reason that they form the structure that then enables you to do everything else you might want to do around them. Because if you don't put the big rocks in first, you're taking out things that somebody else has already done at the shrubbery level or the lower levels in order to plant your trees and let them grow, and they may not be the appropriate right plant, right place in that case. So I think it's great to do all of this, but it's great to do it in a holistic way. But I think it's also, from our point of view, the passion is about trees. You know, my mum was a member of the International Dendrology Society. I don't know whether you know what that is, but it's people who understand this world really rather well. So, and I've grown up since a little boy speaking Latin in the garden.
Thank you for the comments.
So,
Alderman Zuko.
As I said when you brought this forward to council, I fully supported it.
thank you.
It's your baby.
Thank you.
As far as I'm concerned, when you look at the private sector, I need to come out and do things for the city and the greater good. I think that's the organisation that should be responsible on how they spend their money, and this council shouldn't dictate to you how you do or don't. And I don't believe that any elected member should be on your body. It should be the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments before we move on? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all your time and all your questions. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for
I
coming.
look forward to great outcomes.
Great.
Thank you very much, CEO, too. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we move back now to section 7 of the agenda, looking at the procurement strategy performance report for the period ending the 30th of June 2025. Hi.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. It's just the standard report that's required to come back to Council on a quarterly basis. Just outlines progress to date with the procurement strategy. So happy to take it as read and take any questions you might have.
Any questions for the Director?
No.
I'll move the recommendation.
All those in favour?
All right.
Carried.
As you were.
I'm staying because I've probably got the next one.
You're doing the next one as well?
Try and stretch it out a bit.
I'll do it.
It's the risk management strategies.
That is the revised City of Hobart risk.
Yeah,
management
so
framework.
moving to item 7.2, revised City of Hobart risk management framework.
I'll move that.
Moved by the Lord Mayor. Any comments or questions before I put that?
I think there's a risk that the risk management strategy is getting so long and so detailed that it could get lost in time. You know, like when do we go back to the shorter versions of these things as we go through this cycle of we've got to increasingly put more stuff into it, and then the simplification process down the track. Like it's pretty detailed.
It is very detailed, a lot of work's gone into it, of course. We've tried to cover off as many of the perceived risks that we potentially face and be aware of those. But we certainly, Council, are looking at reviewing this on a regular basis, so we can certainly take that on board when we go through the next iteration of it to ensure that it's focused and addressing those key risks that we think we're facing with the Council.
Because I can't remember it. I read it, I have no idea.
It's
That table, but a lot of the content is really dense.
It is dense. We have a number of key risks that we've always got to address, but we can certainly take that on board as far as having almost probably an executive summary or somewhere over the top of the frameworks in the future.
Yep. It's an internal document though. So
It is.
It's for you guys.
It's what our management team focus on when they go about their daily business to be aware of these types of risks.
Yeah.
Any other comments for the Director?
Chair, just
Councillor Posselt?
thank you very briefly. I think it's really well summarised with the paragraph. Overall, the city has a balanced approach to its risk appetite, aligned to its strategic objectives. Council aims to minimise its exposure to risks to safety and wellbeing, the environment, cybersecurity and IT, governance and legal, while accepting increased degree of risk in the pursuit of key strategic objectives where required. As I said to you when you brought it for workshop, super important piece of work. The matrix you've developed is spot on. Particularly for the strategic element, the fact that it stretches between low appetite and high appetite, it gives us flexibility to move as a council rather than restricting ourselves, because I think something like that was listed as low risk in the previous framework, which means that we can't do anything overly interesting or innovative and still follow our own policy. So, I commend your work. I think it's summed up well, and I don't have any questions. Risk and Audit have approved it, so happy with that.
Thank you.
Any other comments before I put that? No, all in favour?
No.
Carried unanimously. Moving to item 7.3 on the agenda, which is the city venues policy, for which we'll get the manager of the Creative City, manager of legal, corporate governance and director of community economic and development.
Thank you, Chair. Item 7.3 is the city's venues policy, and elected members will recall this policy was workshop recently in this forum. So the recommendation now following that feedback is that the Council adopt the city venues policy marked as attachment A, and that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to make any further minor changes and amendments necessary to finalise the policy. But I've asked Justine to just go through some of the key points of the policy and particularly some of the changes from the workshop that have been included in the final version.
Noting that Wes isn't here, he's on holiday, so I think that for the most part the workshop we did on the 14th of July, we went through the legal risk and legislative considerations, had a look at the fees, non-community and community and climate sustainability. And the only real changes we made to that document was updating the venues that were in the policy and the definitions. So no real updates. It was really just coming back to for the recommendation.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for the staff?
Overall,
Councillor
yeah,
Elliott.
happy with the, thank you, happy with the principles. Just a very small thing around our consistency in policies. This sounds silly, but all the dot points here end in semicolons, and I was wondering why they end in full stops on others. That's just a policy consistency thing. And also there's a typo on 3.4, just with the dot point there, the full stop. I particularly like the musts in 3.14 and 3.16 around must have opportunity to provide feedback and must provide a statement of reasons, and I like that they're musts, not shoulds. I'm happy with where we've got to with that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? There being none, I'll put the motion. I think we need a mover as well. Moved by Councillor Elliott. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Moving to item 7.4, the memorials policy. I'd like to invite the manager of the Creative City and Director Community Economic Development to the table to introduce. Hello.
Thank you, Chair. Item 7.4, similar to the previous item, the memorials policy. Elected members will remember that we did a workshop on this recently as well, and that the recommendation, similar to the previous policy, that Council adopt the City of Hobart memorials policy is attached to the report. And there's also other recommendations around rescinding previous policies, and that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to finalise any minor amendments to finalise the policy. Again, I'll ask Justine to go through any of the changes into the workshop, but also key points of the policy before finalising.
Yep, and so this was also on the 14th, and we did make a couple of changes. The first was section 3.4, sorry. I think that was a response to Councillor Elliott's feedback on just saying that it was out of, to change the wording to say it was out of the scope of the policy, so we did update that. And then so this is the memorials policy document. And in the eligibility criteria, just to note that in section 5, donation of park furniture, after we've checked in with the manager open space, we've updated that. It used to be the trees and park furniture. So it no longer relates to trees, as they're currently moving that service to our city canopy. So the recommendation from the open spaces team was to remove the tree element from section 5. No other changes were made to the document.
Thank you for that. Any comments or questions, Lord Mayor?
Yeah, sorry, I haven't read it again, the policy before the meeting. So all of the stuff around trees being able to be planted in memoriam for people that's been removed.
So it's really just the donation for people, the donation section of the eligibility criteria. So you could, sorry, I'm just going to go to it myself. I'll just note what Sean said. So I don't think it relates to that, Lord Mayor, but it's really just that they've taken out, so section 5, for trees, the species must be satisfaction of mayor of manager open space and plantings only in the winter months. So it's really just the if you're donating a tree, that you would not be able to do that. You'd go through a different system. So our city canopy system.
And what is that system?
It's still currently being developed according to that team. So they're just really taking it out of the memorials space.
I don't remember that conversation saying that we should do that, because it was actually, this has obviously been in development for quite some time, and there was a view that this was an appropriate way for people to recognise loved ones rather than lots of plaques, and that this would be, I guess, a better steer to direct people rather than trying to put plaque on every single park bench or every single whatever.
Yeah.
And it seemed like quite a creative and sort of sensible, and it was based on a whole heap of other cities doing something similar. So I'm not sure why we've kind of abandoned it. And I don't remember there being a discussion to abandon that.
Can we get some comments by the CEO?
Well, the discussions occurred while I was on annual leave, so I'm not sure who was in the room at the time to be able to.
I defer to that, but I don't think the concept of the donating of trees being abandoned. This policy is about memorials and plaques, so it's got to be in memoriam of recognising a past resident. But the process for tree donation, I think, still remains with our parks team.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we can take it on notice. Like, as far as I think that what I guess in terms of what's come before my desk around this is that we don't want people to be able to ascribe a particular species of tree. I think that we need to be able to make sure that we're complying with our own guidelines in terms of the trees that we plant. But I do believe that there's an ability to be able to request a tree be planted in memorial. So and the director's nodding behind you there. So I'll get that on notice and provide you the official advice, but everyone in the room's understanding is you can still request a tree to be planted in memorial.
It's more the fact you can't donate the tree to council.
No.
Yeah, because you said the exact wording is we don't want people donating trees to council, not in the same way we wouldn't want people donating a park bench.
Sure.
So it's like, it's just...
Yeah, but if somebody's, wants to, we're gonna send them down the pathway more of donating, getting a tree in memoriam of their loved one rather than, having heaps of park benches or with plaques all over them, or plaques in random places, and which again seem to be where a lot of cities are going, because otherwise there is this kind of these pieces of infrastructure that then require sort of updating after 10 years when they fall off, and there's a question of who pays and that sort of thing. So I supported that kind of original intent, that's a better place to direct. But it's not saying you can't have those other things, but we're sort of more heading people in that other direction.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Harvey.
Wait a second. So with trees will be selected from the city's nursery or other suitable stock as determined by the city. 2.3 in the policy there. So what happens is you put a tree in, and how do you know why that tree is there?
You get told, I think, so personally, but there's no plaque or anything.
Okay.
What was my understanding.
But that's it. The tree's there, and you've got to know.
You get a letter that says this is your special person's tree.
Okay. And
so
only you know. So there's no register of trees.
I think in other cities they do have registers, like
there
they
is?
have an online map, but I don't know what
I saw a nod over there. Yep.
I think that's what we've been doing in this case there, because he's maintaining people.
Yeah.
It's important to register that. So therefore we know that that's what it's putting for. We know it has the significance, and we make sure that we treat it as that.
Okay, that's fine. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Any other discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So we have the policy, and we also have the terms of reference for the advisory group. That's when they go together.
So it's the four documents. So the policy,
the schedules.
The schedule A, the terms of reference, and the
On the last page,
eligibility criteria as well as
with the terms of reference, it says on page 3 of 4 of that, one of the paragraphs says there that where Palawa Tasmanian Aboriginal cultural content history is intended or implied as part of the proposal, at least one member of the Palawa community will be invited to sit in the advisory group. Does that capture also when looking at removal of memorials?
It would, yes.
And does that at least one member, do they have the voting rights like the other members of the group?
Advisory.
Yeah, so it's advisory because obviously we're placing the recommendation to council. So the group doesn't make decisions, they provide a recommendation to council.
Yeah. I understand that Councillor Harvey interrupted there and said it's advisory, but in here it says about that if there isn't consensus in the group that there's a vote.
On the advice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the way that the advisory group is to work is that all of the key information would be compiled and then put in the report to council.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that if a member of the Palawa community were in the room, then that advice would also be provided to council.
So just to make sure I'm crystal clear, I'm reading out there, if consensus on the advisory group cannot be reached, a vote will be conducted with the majority vote supported. So my question is, when at least one Palawa person is in that advisory group, do they have voting rights?
In that capacity, they're given the consensus and articulating the numbers, and that'd be the report that would be put forward to council.
So that's a yes?
It's a yes.
Yes. So what's to stop the situation where, because it has there at least one person, why wouldn't you have, what's to stop it for Aboriginal Palawa people being on the group and then have voting rights around the recommendation? And I completely accept it's around the recommendation that comes to council, but it's just a question, is that appropriate? It's very open.
Yeah, we can tighten that up in terms of being clearer in the representation, but
there's complete capacity just to stack it.
Just to raise the...
I haven't finished yet, if that's all right.
Continue, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So, did you want to finish, CEO?
Oh, I was just looking for advice in terms of the drafting of that. I mean, at the end of the day, it probably is, it's fairly open. So.
And if we don't know the answers around the table right here, it
Yeah.
should be in the guidelines, the terms of reference.
So I think provided there's representation, it doesn't necessarily need to nominate multiple representation. So.
And you also can advise the group without voting rights.
Yeah, I think they're advisory in nature. I think if you're participating in a meeting, you ought to have the ability to be able to cast a vote in terms of the. But at the end of the day, it's an advisory recommendation to council, so they're not making a decision; they're just providing it. So.
I understand that, but it's literally written in the policy that the advisory committee, if it can't reach consensus, votes.
Yeah, that's
so it needs to be.
And that's a usual thing in terms of that, so that it's clear and transparent. If a matter's coming to council, that there might be some dissent or disagreement, and that should be you should be aware of that.
So I just want it clearly tightened up, voting rights or not, 1 member, 7 members.
Yeah, well, I think we can limit it in terms of to representation, and clearly, if they're participating in the meeting, I would expect that they would have an ability to vote, and again, that's transparently reported to council. So.
Okay, and in the same vein, given it would be a colonisers' monument that would be looking to be removed, is it not fair that we also have opportunity for a descendant for the person or a colonisers' representative on the group, or are their views not equal and treated fairly, or they're not allowed to have their views heard? We have the Aboriginal community, while we not have a descendant from John Franklin or someone that came on the first boat, a convict. Why can't we have all sides represented?
I guess through you, Chair, I mean, you're dealing with specific as opposed to the general. I guess if you are dealing with a specific monument that has descendants, I mean, the council clearly has the ability to do the research and reach out. But if you're talking as a general rule, not talk, then you wouldn't necessarily do that. You'd obviously have your representatives that are broadly sort of representative of the community. So
notwithstanding broader engagement.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously this will be relied on, and then if there's questions later, say it'll be, well, that's not in our terms of reference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it should be in the terms of reference, or should it not?
So just so I'm clear, it's about when we're dealing with a specific recommendation. In this case, we're talking about a recommendation to council to remove a monument, whether the council would get further representation from any family or descendants from that relate. That's what we're talking about.
I think that would be ideal.
Yeah.
The reason I'm bringing this up is because of the section in there where it says that if it relates to Palawa content and history, and a Palawa representative person is there. To me, it's only fair and justified that if it was John Franklin or whoever else renaming Macquarie Street, that there would be representation on both sides. And I think that should be accounted for in the terms of reference, should it not?
That's totally fair, and any memorial will have the family and the descendants have put forward the proposal and have been engaged in that process to put the proposal forward to the advisory group. So in that capacity they'll be involved, but it's not on.
Is that written in the policy though? I couldn't see that.
Advisory group may seek advice from internal or
Councillor
external.
Harvey, excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
I guess when something that comes to council for either adding a memorial or removing a memorial, it has to come with a recommendation or with a proposal. So that might include historical records. Again, often if it comes from the family, it would have to include their support. And before it goes to the advisory group, if there is elements missing, that you would suggest that they would be asking for that additional information, as well as obviously our own expertise within council. So I think in terms of the policy and how it's written, it does say that you must put forth a proposal for both either an addition or a removal, and that has to come as a package of all the elements that we need to have to consider that. So it might be identified that there is a family or that the family has to be involved, or a descendant. So I would suggest that it could be done as you're saying. It just would depend on the specific memorial.
Thank you. Can I, because the effort's been gone to call out the explicit inclusion of a Palawa person, so can I, in this context, move that we defer this item to come back, because it's on for approval, this item, isn't it?
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. It is.
Yes.
I might seek some clarity from the
Well, that's a
CEO.
procedural motion.
Yeah.
She can, if she chooses
Yeah,
to.
I move that we defer this to include that consideration.
Can we
Lord
defer
Mayor?
it at the end of discussion, because otherwise it gets deferred without hearing from everybody?
Yep.
And you need a range of views before it gets, take it away and bring it back to us.
I withdraw my procedural motion.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. We'll put that later
Good luck.
in the discussion. Councillor Posselt?
Thank you. I guess a number of things. That the panel that we're talking about for advice for memorials is a generic panel that is set up with a specific inclusion for when we have an item of Palawa content to have Palawa representation. I think it's important to note that the Palawa are not represented by. Sorry.
Yeah, just hold on.
We'll see.
The Palawa are not represented by a single voice. Palawa are a broad community, and limiting their representation to a single voice would be contrary to the way that their culture works anyway. So the notion of limiting Palawa representation to the committee is a falsehood when we're talking about a Palawa-specific memorial. In terms of, we're not, the clause that invites Palawa to come along doesn't apply to every colonial monument, I wouldn't have thought, nor is it intended to. And further to that, if we have another crowther, which is I think where Councillor Elliott is angling, if we have another crowther or similar high profile removal, there would be considerably more work and more advice received than just the advice from this committee. You would provide a very detailed officer report. There would be engagement well beyond the scope of the committees that are set up here. This is about having a process for, shall we say, like a lower profile monument than pulling out John Franklin. Like, I don't think we're going to go and stack a committee with 10 Palawa people and then pull Franklin out and say, well, we did our due diligence there. I mean, that's not what this policy is about. And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding on that, which is why I'm really reluctant to defer this. I think that the policy, we've had it to workshop, and you've come back, you've listened to the broad range of voices on council, and you've come back with decent suggestions for how we move forward. I don't think that there is need to limit the Palawa representation on this advisory group. And I would also say that the addition to the advisory group officers would be approved by officers. You couldn't just rock up to the advisory panel with 20 of your mates and expect them to join in. Is that correct, that there would be some sort of approval process for when Palawa people are called in, how that is done? Yeah, and you would limit it to a sensible number.
Yeah, it would. I would suggest that it would be the chair would make the decision.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the chair would make the decision in an open and transparent manner, and if there was a reason to have 3 Palawa people because they represent 3 different communities, or they've got 3 different perspectives, you might have circular head for whatever reason, and you might have someone more local. But if we restrict it to just one, then you'll only have one view on a matter that concerns a broader community. So I don't think Councillor Elliott's points are valid. I don't think that white men need representation or to be called out as needing specific representation. We're not the minority, we're not a minority, we're a majority of people, and I'm sure that this panel has plenty of white fellas already on it, so I'm sure that if we're pulling Franklin out, we will go and seek advice from descendants of Franklin if we wish to do that, but it doesn't need to be included in the terms of reference for this specific committee. I'm happy with where it's at. I'm happy to approve it tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Posselt. Any other discussion? Alderman Bloomfield.
I'd just like to make the point that I don't think Councillor Alex particularly wrong. She's asking for surety, which is quite different to suggesting there's an absence. We've already seen what can happen, and it's effectively ensuring, to some degree, using policy and procedure, that we have a better process should any other further monuments be removed for any reason. Because the way the process was for Crowther was a very distressing one for many parts of the community, both sides. And I feel that we need to be very careful how we tread going forwards to establish that never happens again.
Thank you, Alderman Bloomfield. Lord Mayor?
Yeah, just a couple of things. The first was just around, I think in the previous workshop I asked around, there seemed to be very sort of tight controls that, you know, a memorial could only be of Tasmanian, you know, to recognise a Tasmanian significant person or event, and I was just a bit concerned that that was a little bit narrow, given someone might come forward with an amazing, I don't know, United Nations Antarctica thing, or, you know, although we're in Antarctica, we're city, it's not really, it's or something a bit more international. But I think the way you dealt with it at the time was to say that the Memorials Committee could, you know, could say, well, we you know, this is generally what we would support, but given this particular community have come forward with this outstanding proposal to have an international peace memorial, and it's a stunning bit of artwork and it's a really amazing thing, we think Hobart should make some space for it because it'll put us on the map or whatever. So it gives them that room to make those kind of bigger picture decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it was a good point to make. Obviously, the policy is a decision-making process, and the scope and what, you know, I guess the core memorials that we would consider within the document. However, there's still the application process that you can go through, and the consideration of the group that, you know, can look at. You know, anyone can submit a proposal effectively. Yeah. So, you know, I guess it would then be to determine if it was, you know, if it was valid and relevant to go through that process. But I don't think it's meant to, you know, it's not to prevent people from submitting a proposal if they're not within this very specific scope. And I take your point, obviously, you know, with what was laid out there, I guess, in terms of like items significant to Tasmania, etc. They're not a preventative method. They're really there to guide what's, you know, usually acceptable.
I guess the concern though is that a committee, like in 3 years' time, like when, you know, we haven't sort of reviewed the policy, and, you know, there are different people in different roles. They might go, oh no, well, this is all we're allowed to, you know, if it doesn't tick this box, then we... So it was about having something in there that just sort of said, you know, or other important memorials that of outstanding, you know, merit that the committee thinks are worth, you know, so that there's a disclaimer there for them, so they don't sort of go, well, we can't, you know, we're not allowed to. Because sometimes policies... with certain committees, they get very much, oh, we can't go beyond. So it was just sort of some sort of sentence in the criteria that just says something like, or, you know, or the committee can consider proposals outside this scope if they're of outstanding, that, you know, character and contribution to the city or something. So you're giving permission to consider that. And yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, say that just to make a note that the Crowther statute process was actually nominated for a Tasmanian or national award, and I think is probably one of the best processes that has been in place for the removal of a colonial statue. Colonial statues around the world have, often just been pushed down through vandalism. I mean, this one was in the end, but that wasn't sort of, the process was, very deliberative, very considered, based on lots of research. It wasn't also the council's decision, it was the Heritage Council of Tasmania and the Planning Commission all basically agreed on this. So I really dispute the suggestion that this was a bad process. Having people disagree about things is just part of the democratic process. It's not bad or divisive, it's just what is the nature of the world around a whole heap of subjects. And also, I guess, a little bit of a concern that if we say, we must have, a descendant's voice, we may also have dissenting descendants' voices, as we did with Crowther, because we were contacted by Crowther ancestors who were very comfortable with the decisions that were made by those ourselves and Heritage Council and others, as well as those who weren't happy. So, to what extent will our committee get into that back and forth? I think that's really up to the council to consider those different voices, whereas I think the committee should be looking more at the kind of the merits of the place, the merits of the, looking a little bit more at the thing. And it's really up to us as a political organisation, I guess, or political decision makers to balance all of those different interests. And given we would make the decision, then I sort of think, well, maybe that's where we consider the balance of different views.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Elliott.
I agree with the Lord Mayor around that. In terms of reference, the reference group should be around the internal expertise more so. And I think it would make complete sense for that sentence under decision making to be removed. And I propose an amendment that small paragraph on page 3 where it says the Palawa Aboriginal cultural content history is intended at least one member of the Palawa community, that mini paragraph to be deleted. Because that achieves the same thing. You were saying how it shouldn't have the different voices in there from the descendant, and that it should be more in the political space, and I agree with that. And by taking that out, that achieves that, so neither side is in there.
Except if that's about removals, but I think as Councillor Possett's saying, it also could be around a new memorial. Maybe if there's a new memorial about the Palawa's views about the mountain or the river, like they should be involved in the sort of design and consideration of the creation of a new thing, whereas removals might be a slightly different sort of category.
Wouldn't they be involved by default as the proposer?
I don't know.
Councillor Elliott, are you moving an amendment?
Yes, please. That we delete that, because in answer to I understand your concern, but I would imagine that whoever the proposer is of a concept, whoever brings that concept comes forward, would follow it through the process, and that might be Aboriginal people or representatives. So my amendment is that we delete that mini paragraph on the basis that the inclusion would mean that only one side has this extra voice in this advisory group, which I think is unjust. So, and I agree with the Lord Mayor that this group should be more around internal expertise, coming from each of the different streams of the organisation, and noting that it's in addition to engagement and in addition to coming to council for approval. So that's my amendment, to delete that section on page 3.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. As we haven't often moved amendments during workshop committee, I'm just going to talk to the CEO to check on the process from here. Do we need to get this in writing, page numbers?
Oh, look, I think as long as we're clear in the minute what the amendment is, then I think that's fine. I mean, you are entitled, this committee is delegated to make decisions on policy matters like this, so in the same way as a council meeting, you are able to move amendments to what's proposed. So as long as we're clear on what it is.
Yeah, I'd like a little bit of advice on the amendment, because I don't, unfortunately I don't have it in front of me, so I guess, yeah, like how would that,
Director, can you provide some advice on the proposed amendment,
Yep,
please?
I'll just pull the document
or
up.
how would that affect what was the intent of the clause? Just,
Policies and in terms of reference up on the screen, we can go through.
oh, that's a good idea.
Do you want me to?
Oh, maybe we should be deferring it then.
To the council.
We can move to discussion of the amendment while the officers are pulling up the relevant.
Well, if I may, I mean, Chair, I mean, there are several matters in addition, so several matters that have been raised, one of which is around, you know, being able to consider further persons outside of the, you know, Tasmanian as well as the issues being raised by...
Or themes, not just persons, yeah.
Yes, I do think they're more fundamental, and perhaps it is better to move forward with Councillor Elliott's deferral motion, because there are things that we need to work through. Clearly it's not quite right.
Councillor Elliott, how would you like to continue?
Yeah, let's defer. I'll go back to the deferral motion, please.
Okay, so we're moving a deferral for this item. Any discussion on that before I put that to a vote?
I don't think any discussion on the procedure.
Thank you. That's a procedural motion, so moving straight to the vote then. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against?
No.
So that's one no, that's carried. Show of hands for all in favour.
Councillor Kelly, Alderman Zirko, Councillor Elliott, Alderman Blomfield, Lord Mayor, and Councillor Kixos.
I'm up as well.
And Councillor Hunt.
All those against?
Councillor Consent.
So that's carried. That item will now be moved to deferral, and we're moving forward in the agenda to section 8. We've done 8.1, so we're moving to 8.2, which I understand concerns the director's already at the table. So we will continue with that item, please.
Okay. Item 8.2 is an update on the 2024 Christmas New Year's Eve events, and also a bit of an overview of some of what's planned for the 2025 Christmas and New Year's Eve events. And again, I'll ask Justine to give us an update on this report.
Thank you, Justine.
So, thanks everyone, and slightly lighter note, moving into Christmas. So, I presented to council last year, I think it was November, December, on the plans for Christmas, and having only started with council in September, I think people were it's a little late to make any feedback. So we did get asked to bring back a bit of an update on what had happened last year, and apologies that's a little bit late in the tooth as well, but we've actually combined the sort of what happened last year and moving into this year. So I'll take the report as read for 2024 Christmas initiatives. Unless there's any particular questions before I move into the 2025 Christmas program and New Year's Eve program. There's a couple of updates that I can provide you as well. So did anyone have any questions around 2024? I saw quite a few elected members out and about doing things, so excellent. So in terms of the Christmas program for this year, we've started off by doing, so it really encompasses the decorations, the pageant, Hobart, City of Hobart led activations, and the community Christmas grants. So at this point, we know that some of particularly our brand is at the end of life, and we've started the year off by putting out some community consultation on the sort of the look and feel of the Christmas brand. I did note over social media and feedback last year, we got a lot of comments about how old and tired that brand was looking, and so we really respectfully knew that It was something that the city felt really strongly about, is that, you know, we want to overhaul that and give it a bit of a fresh face. So we have started that engagement. We did a Have Your Say from the 20th of June to 25th of July to really seek what the city was liking and wanting to see in terms of the new Christmas look. And we had quite a good engagement, sort of over 200 people with feedback, which is fantastic. And from that feedback, we have also looked to engage a new graphic designer and to develop that brand. So that's really like the things that brand's on, is like our banners, our planner boxes, the base of the Christmas tree. So it kind of encompasses one look and feel across the city. And we have engaged a design company, and I do have Abby here who could probably speak to it as well. We've sort of worked with the comms and marketing team, our economic development team, and Creative City to look at how that would how we get to the next iteration of that. And we did provide the graphic or the design team the feedback from the community survey as well. So they're really across what was coming through, which was really important. Did you want to say a few words about that?
Through the chair.
What were the themes coming through?
The overarching one is, how do you keep Christmas traditional but make it Hobart? And that's the design challenge we gave the designer, which was a really good one that she's nailed basically beyond our expectations. So not losing words like Merry Christmas, seasons, greetings and joy came through loud and proud. Things like the Christmas wreaths, some of those visual identities that people identify as being Christmas, but how do you do it in a modern, contemporary way that makes our city look a little bit more like Hobart and not like Melbourne or Sydney, etc. So we had to talk about whether we come to you with the visual, and we've decided to hold it back a little bit. But basically, the theory of the visual is there's actually a native flora called the Tasmanian Christmas bell. So it's actually located in Wellington Park, comes out at Christmas time. It's red, pink and yellow, so it's a beautiful colour palette. We're lucky here, I guess. Christmas is in summer, so we have the greenery of the city to give us that sense of Christmas green. So it'll be very bringing in those traditional sense of the words. The design can be used with those words in the shape of a wreath, in the shape of Christmas presents, trees, and then the activations Justine will talk about bring through those other more, I guess, theatrical elements of Christmas with the carols and some activations that we'll do, and letter writing to Santa that is always received really well. So I'll let Justine.
Thank you. You want to speak about design, getting a marketing design expert as the voice of that. So so we've just had the initial consultation, and obviously the design that is coming through is not quite fleshed out, but obviously we're heading in that direction with the survey feedback as well. So that's kind of a key element of the program this year is refreshing that brand. And invite any questions before we move to one of the next areas, if there was anything that people had questions about.
Lord Mayor. I guess, is there any way that we can commission some of these decorations to be made locally with things that are less sort of plasticky?
Yep, absolutely.
Fabric artists, or like is that something that or is that just sort of unaffordable, or they're not as resilient as the kind of the stuff coming from, importing it from mass Christmas tinsel factories?
I appreciate what you're saying. I think with the Christmas brand, it's really reskinning quite a lot of the existing things. So like your planner boxes, you're really putting that brand up, and your banners, we're doing that with local suppliers. In terms of the decorations, which aren't the branded things, they're like your wreaths, etc. What we have in stock now will also be end of life, and we are looking at how that can be more sustainable as well. And it's really important, obviously, because you don't want sort of, cheap and low shelf life kind of decorations as well.
So for things like wreaths, we are considering whether a local artist could create something out of a more sustainable.
We had worked with our fabrication team as well. They did the stars in the mall, so there's definitely options. It's really just trying to obviously
plan those ahead. At this point this year, we're really just focusing on the Christmas brand and not buying any more decorations. We'll use the current stock. So.
For this year?
Yeah, it's really mainly just the things that will be reskinned with the new look and feel.
Councillor Elliott?
Thank you. A little bit disappointed to hear then that we're not doing the actual decorations this year, only the recent skinning stuff. So my broad feedback is that we have the banners that go up on all the different poles, but they actually kind of become a bit invisible because you get used to them always being there and you don't really see them as much, in my opinion. Around the planter boxes is good, but I remember, working in the city when I started work at 15, and you go down Collins Street and they used to be strung across Collins Street in the 4 blocks, and we don't have that anymore, and I think it's sad. And so I did that survey and encouraged others to do it. And my overall feedback, and you might be talking about this later, but I'll just get it out quickly, is that my personal view is that we should be concentrating our money and time and effort on the CBD, not spreading ourselves too thin out into North Hobart and things like that, and really doing a big high impact on the city block, on the 4. And I would love to see the suspension decorations again. I also am a bit worried about if we're going to be launching the brand on the banners and the planter boxes, but using the same tied decorations, if you lose the bit of the wow factor with that. So part of me almost feels like holding it back or biting the bullet on the decorations too. I would love to feel proud of the decorations in our city. Haven't done for years. I think they're pretty lame. I can understand where the Lord Mayor's coming from in terms of sustainability stuff, but if we can buy high end that's really durable for a good 10 years or more out of it, maybe we can do the more focus on whether it's handmade fabrics and things for internal stuff, maybe inside Townhall or something like that. I like and can understand what Abby was saying around people want the traditional still but with a modern twist, and looking up the colour palette of those Christmas bells I think would be nice and not something you've seen done before. In the survey it also came through to me that I really hate the thought of us competing with the private sector, and I'm hoping that we're talking to all the businesses around what they're planning. Obviously Centrepoint Santa's awesome, and Myers, and that we don't compete with that. That we share the Santa and the letter Santa that's out there, rather than competing, making sure we're not doing what the private's already doing. And my personal thing as well is that I would rather see investment in more of the static decorations than the roving entertainer things. I just don't think, it's nice for those few hours, but I think the money would be better spent in 24/7 look and feel than a few hours, unless it's volunteer, of course. People can come and sing for free, that's fine. Because I think in the survey it had some different sort of activities. Would you like to see these? Yep. And I think, no, please don't do that because the private sector does that. Please don't do this because it'd be great to have that money invested. Because our brand is tired, and if we want to maintain a status or reputation as being the capital city, let's give it a real. Let's impress people. So I think maybe just taking on board that half launching the brand while you still got your tired decorations. But I'm not sure. I'm sure these things would be expensive. But I would be keen to see us spend money on it and get it right, because I'm sure it comes back in terms of reputation and economic impact.
Alderman Bloomfield.
Interesting enough, I've been watching what's been happening in Melbourne and Sydney the last few years because I had to travel over there a fair bit. And it was interesting because it disappointed me a lot that for years we didn't have the word Christmas. I'm glad to hear that we're actually introducing that word, because it really felt like roast chicken day, season's greetings. So I'm glad to see that we're actually accepting the fact that this is a Christian ceremony, whether we like it or not, and it's actually something that attracts people no matter their religion, because Christian society is actually very it's very welcoming to anyone of any other religion. So it actually increases our status as a holiday place. It doesn't decrease or take away at all. So that was the first thing I wanted to put back, was the fact that I'm glad that you've listened and you can see that there was some interest in that. And the other thing is too, that I'm glad too to see that the rebranding is being done as it is, which is great. Interestingly enough, I felt the last year in particular in Melbourne, when you go along the South Bank area and so forth, it became very utilitarian, very metal, as in there was nothing really pretty about it. You just saw these bare metal structures, and it was only at night when the lights turned up you went, oh, that actually is nice. It did not look nice during the day at all. And when they had the things across the bridges, they were so utilitarian, you just thought, well, that wasn't very celebratory. So we haven't gone the way Melbourne has, and I'm very grateful. And I hope that we don't, and I hope that from what you're describing, you certainly haven't with the flowers and the designs and decorations, which is great. Because I do think that there is something that's not utilitarian about these decorations. And I do understand too that there was quite a lot of discussion about a year ago, in fact, about doing the additional pieces in the suburbia. I think there was a particular roundabout in question, I think, somewhere, where the residents had tried to decorate a tiny little tree with a bit of tinsel, and we saw that as being an opportunity, so we did something quite nice there and things like that. I'm also really keenly aware of the fact that I think there was a real push towards lessening the overall cost of the decorations, and I think that was something that is probably being keenly sought with this as well, by reskinning, which is probably the clever way of doing it. And having purchased myself commercial decorations, I'm very aware of how expensive they are, but I'm equally aware of how long they last, because the ones we've got I've had for 15 years, and whilst they shed every year, they're still looking pretty good. So, you know, I kind of understand how it works with all those things. But how long have we got on the large tree? That's getting down to life, isn't it?
It is. It's currently 7 years into its estimated 10 years. And I would note that the brand is really the phase one, the decorations. Yeah. I guess it's the theory is, do you want to replace something that's still not close to its end of life? So, I mean, in terms of being sustainable with the resources, we sort of, the brand, all those are end of life. Obviously the Christmas tree's only got a few more years in it, so we're really just rolling through the phases of what has to be replaced.
No, I figured it wasn't completely
not quite there.
I just thought it was getting close, so we had to start planning. That's what I was thinking of. Because that was quite a significant cost.
That's right. They're expensive. Yeah,
I just hope that we never see another one of those tomato trellis decorations again up in Salamanca.
Okay.
That was bad.
Just write down tomato trellis.
Alderman Zuko.
It's all right, I would.
Thank you. So I guess the encouragement I would give is similar to what Councillor Elliott was saying, which was if we were able to budget over time something, well, if we could tick all the boxes, the sustainable, Tasmanian, but actually have across the streets, it does give a real wow factor. But unfortunately, if we follow Melbourne, it's just, I'd have to show you guys photos to tell you what I mean. It really is unimpressive. And I hope that we kind of stick to what we've done, even though it might be old worldly. I think it's actually quite unique to Hobart. I think that was most everything. Oh, there was one more thing. There was another person who actually pushed me towards examining what was happening in France, of all places. Apparently Paris is a city of lights, but in particular, what they were encouraging and doing was all the shops actually were encouraged to put fairy lights around all their doors. So if they opened at night time, you would actually see these little lights everywhere, which made it quite attractive. That is something that if we were looking at, every year we kind of look at doing those grants and so forth to encourage Christmas-style windows and things, perhaps that's something we could do, because that would give a really good eat-through quality. But don't know about costing, don't know about take-up and all the rest of those things. But that was just something that I'd been kind of given that could be quite interesting. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Burnell.
So I concur with although Bloomfield in regards to Melbourne really does it really well. But what they also do is they actually use live plants. A few years ago, before we went down the track of building the tomato trellis as a Christmas tree, I actually put forward that the Hobart City Council should go down the track of actually planting real trees in and around the city in strategic places and use them at Christmas and maybe other times. Now, once you plant a tree, it'll keep on growing. We don't have to replace it. So I'm going to put forward an amendment that we go down the track of revisiting the possibility of planting real plants, real trees and or plants, because when you look at Melbourne's, where they do all their displays, they've actually got plants, or they've got them potted and bring them in, right, to use. Sorry?
We've done the potted plants in the mall.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you, Lord Mayor, is we can actually have them strategically in places around the city. Who knows? I'm not saying, but we could have one right on this corner here.
It's in the report.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I put it forward, but we've never done it. Okay.
Excuse me, Alderman Zuko, because this is a workshop item, we don't need to do any amendments at this time.
Okay, no amendments.
Yeah.
Hopefully the officers will take it on board. Because at the end of the day, once the tree's there, or the trees or the shrubs or whatever are there, we don't have to replace them.
What sort of trees? For you, Chair, what sort of trees? Seriously, what do you want? Douglas fir tree, radiata?
Well, whatever resembles a Christmas tree. Actually, I've got to say, what a great idea. Why don't we do something really innovative and start the first tree in the middle of the tomato trellis, so it grows within that trellis, so we don't have to see that trellis anymore. So there's something for the officers to have a look at.
Thank you, Alderman Zuko. Any other comments on this item?
Oh, there's the tree. There's the tree. The big tree they have in Melbourne. It's amazing.
There's
Councillor Harvey.
There's a dot point here. Franklin Square. That's over there. New live tree lighting displays. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm not just talking about. I'm not just talking about Franklin Square. I said in strategic places around the city. There could be one put in North Hobart, one in South Hobart, one in Lenna Valley.
No, it's my go. Hang on. Okay. Yep. So I
asked
don't
the
care.
question. I answered the question.
Yep. I'm happy to have live trees covered in whatever, but I also want to defend the tomato trellis down at Salamanca. One of the greatest pieces of art that has ever been installed in the city of Hobart. People still talk about it. I was down there after an event the other day and there were people milling around it, talking about it. They're all saying, WTF is this thing? and it gave me the opportunity to introduce them to this and they all went, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So this piece of art lives on in the minds of Hobartians and will live on until we have a policy to get rid of it.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey.
Who said I'm finished? So with the rest of this, what's the overall budget for the what's this thing? The Christmas carry on.
So obviously we've just spoken about the
total funding pool of 75.
The Christmas decorations and yet to go through the pageant, etc.
Yep.
So there's obviously it's within our operational budget and in different areas. There's Christmas in the city and there's a Christmas pageant budget. So we don't have an actual identified for purchase of new decorations. It's really the operations of what happens at Christmas and within the pageant.
So regardless of what everyone wants, we're going to stick with our budget and deliver the Christmas event based on current budgets.
Yeah, and I think, there's some great points made around the room around, which phases and which we need to plan for in future. So, if that's something that the councillors would like to see or elected members would like to see or specific things, then, we can take that.
And picking up on the Lord Mayor's point about not creating any landfill from Christmas, that's another thing I'd like to also include in the marketing of Christmas is ho, 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 don't create any landfill. Be careful what you buy.
You can make phase of it.
Yeah. To make people just aware that a plastic-free Christmas is something we should all aspire to.
Yeah,
and make sure that what goes into your house at Christmas time doesn't go into your bin post-Christmas. And there's a whole piece around that. Buy local, buy quality, buy stuff that's going to last forever, buy stuff that you can hand down to the next generation. So I'd like that to be considered, because really if we're going to have if we're going to have waste strategies, it needs to include all these events and festivals. And if we're going to have events and festivals that say try and avoid single-use plastics like balloons and tinsel and sparkle and other, what do you call it, that make-uppy stuff, glitter, all of that, you know, a junk-free Christmas would be really lovely. It's not, you know, so I think outside the realm of we buy stuff because we think buying stuff's great, but it's also buying a lot of stuff that ends up in the bin. I think there's a lot of data and statistics around that, you know, how much stuff ends up in the bin after Christmas time, but the bins are overflowing.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey.
So, and the final point is that the Christmas pageant, we do have a good transport strategy to get people in and out of the city, don't we? So it seems to work really well. So that's continuing. Is that evolving?
Yeah, so the Christmas pageant, which is the next item on there, post decorations and brand. So we do. I did want to provide an update on the pageant. So it's actually it has got a group that manages with the Tas Police and Tasmanians, and so there's a traffic management plan. So that will be continuing.
And it's really successful, as I understand.
It is really successful. Yeah. I'd also like to note, just an addition to that, is we have actually had the Wiggles come into town on the 15th November.
The originals?
Well, maybe Anthony.
Fifth generation Wiggles.
Anthony's probably the one who could be there. But because of that, they're doing 2 shows. They're sold out at My State. We've renegotiated and the consideration of the date with Maya to move to the 22nd, which is the weekend after. And I think when we discussed it last time when it went to council, that would probably be a preferred date. So I did want to provide that update. The Wiggles and the Myers pageant would not be a good mix on the same day. And we also have consulted with Targa, which is the car racing, and the majority of their works will be sort of completed by then. But you know, to your point, managing the traffic, managing crowds, etc., for these big events is, you know, and the forefront of that is safety for people attending and staff.
Yeah, no, well done. I've always appreciated how people get in and out of the city.
Yeah.
And there's no letters to the other. It's excellent.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. We've got Councillor Posselt and then the Lord Mayor.
Thank you. It seems that we're taking an ad hoc approach to this, so I'll just jump in with the ad hoc.
Thank you.
One thought that just sprung to me, one small bicky and one big bicky for you. Small bicky is if Targa's in town, have we extended the invite to them to be involved in the pageant? Because, well, mate, race cars through the street with tinsel, everyone can get around that.
You can't have tinsel.
They're usually not. I can answer that now before your next question. They've actually invited themselves to put a car into the pageant, and we will, you know, work with them.
I'd encourage you, if they want to bring 3 different Lamborghinis, you know, just to give some noise and some colour.
No.
Dark cars.
The Target cars, they're usually kind of funny dramas. And
no, there's like Vipers and
no, they can have cardboard cars with straps.
All right, everybody.
Yeah, a couple of cars.
So it's probable.
Yeah, great. That's brilliant. The small bicky is the closure of the waterfront for New Year's.
Yes.
I would encourage you to look a little bit more broadly than what we've done and what Taspol have asked us to do. So Taspol have asked us to close Salamaker Place. That was called, I think. I think that we should close the entire waterfront. So I think nothing goes. I don't know that we do. I think is that correct? We don't close the entire waterfront, do we?
We work.
No.
We work with Tasports and Taspol and all of the services for the whole precinct, and it's not just us, because we're looking at Sydney to Hobart, we're looking at Taste of Tasmania. Like, so we've got a lot of stakeholders in that, but for the most part,
Most of that section is closed, and
Yeah.
then we also provide those mapping for road closures to residents and a range of media.
Yeah,
as
I
well.
think that there's some planning, because I noted that there were some issues in the report from last year around taxi queuing and difficulty with getting taxis and Ubers and things. And I think if we shut everything south, everything Waterside Davey Street to only like organised taxi routes and Ubers and emergency services, it'll yield a better result than the ad hoc approach we've got. Anyone who needs to get to Battery Point can come around the back. They don't need to go along Castro Esplanade. So I'd encourage you to consider Davey Street as a boundary. That's the small bicky. The really big bicky that I want to bite off, because now is the time to do it, is we are the only city in Australia that is not delivering a extravaganza carriage by candlelight, if you will. We're the only city. All of the small cities are doing it. Excuse me. All of the small cities are doing it. All of the big capital cities, Maya Music Bowl, that sort of stuff, are doing it. I think that our community carols are a complete failure with my experience going to them. And the list of recipients of our grants somewhat concerns me, because more than half of our grant money has gone to religious institutions. The biggest grant going to the Archdiocese of Hobart, who I would have thought if they want to put on their own carols, they've got the cash to do it. And the other ones are the Presbyterian Church and St David's Cathedral, and they took more than half of the total community grants into religious institutions. We're an outlier not providing this. I've received feedback from the community that they want it back. They want to have a big event with the TSO and where everyone can come together as a whole of Hobart. You know, I note that the biggest grant recipient was Carols on the Hill, which I've been to before, and it's fairly average, to be honest. And it was cancelled it was forced to move, this year or last year gone, relocating inside and attracting only 350 people and receiving $15,000 to do that, recognising there's weather and stuff that's contributed to that. But even when I've been up there as a community member, I don't think you're getting any more than 350 people to that event anyway. These events that can attract from Greater Hobart as well, I believe as a capital city, it's part of our role to distribute our wealth better. And we're not distributing our wealth when we're holding it's almost exclusive. We're distributing to Lena Valley, to Mount Stewart, there's Mount Stewart and a West Hobart, which is kind of crazy to me that we would do that. My strong feeling from the community and myself is that a proper organised event where we can get all of the creative professionals in Hobart involved, we can have a lead-in of community events, which is what I think Adelaide does. They have a 5-hour concert where you can have high school choirs perform and people come in and flow in and out through gates, and then the concert proper with the professionals starts at 8. But Geelong, Wollongong, Newcastle, Lake Macquarie, Adelaide, Perth, Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Darwin, they all have an extravaganza. We don't. I think we should, I know it's too late for this year, but I think we should have a report prepared to see what that actually looks like. I know they're expensive.
Oh, well, I'm glad you said that. Yeah. So we can certainly look at it for, certainly not this year, but obviously this is the council's position, has been for a fair while, but we can certainly review it. There's no problem about that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll be very supportive of that, because I'm absolutely devastated when we decided to go down this path, and I totally agree. You know, we've got this mishmash of things that are happening across the city. You know, like we actually had sponsors sponsoring it and real good backing, and all of a sudden we decided to dump it. It's, you know, we're probably the only capital city in the whole country that doesn't have a major event for Christmas. And you know, like you know, I remember if I can remember rightly, the old zoo site was even talked about or bandied. I think I might have pushed that to be developed into an amphitheatre in there for an event. These things are, you know, it just sits there. Imagine what we could do. I fully support that, and hopefully officers will take it on board, and maybe an early an early report to a workshop to discuss it, I'll be fully supportive of it.
Lord Mayor?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think I was going to say something about the decorations, and I'm trying to remember back to that. On the decorations, I liked Alderman Zuko's idea of trees around the place, and I think sometimes with Christmas, the reason it's never enough for people and people want more is that it's often a bit, I mean, Christmas is a bit same old, and so I think if every year we can do something slightly different, I think it does get noticed, and I would like us to see, I would like us to provide live trees or trees in other locations other than the city, just to sort of bring the Christmas spirit to a North Hobart or to a Lena Valley or whatever. Now, it may not be practical, but I think that would be appreciated by people that aren't necessarily coming to the city as often. I mean, the tree down at Mawson's Pavilion is much more of a tourist thing. Not that many members of the Hobart community really go to it or see it regularly. So I also wanted to ask a question about what happened to the Midtown crocheted Christmas tree, because that was one of the, talking of something locally made and sort of sustainable. It was one of the best sort of very collaborative, put it together, and it was stunning. So one, where is that? And two, can we do more of that kind of thing? Because there is a lot of the, Hobart does have a big crafty sort of scene, and it's a bit sort of trendy these days to do that. So maybe we could even do a bit of that. Like, I'd rather see some resources go into kind of interesting either crafty things or different native pine trees would be really interesting in different parts of Hobart. People could go and see the hoop pine in Lena Valley and the native Tasmanian pine. What's the one up in the World Heritage Area? They could do different pines around the place. Anyway,
I think that's wrong country.
So that's that one. Where is that?
We got one.
The crochet tree.
Well, it's in the Botanical Gardens.
Oh, one of those ones, yeah,
but the other one is, I think you're right, it's the crochet tree is around. I think the team are working with Midtown on what they'd like to do, so we might see a return of that. I can get an update on it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it didn't last, but it looked very sort of robust. It was made out of thick wool.
Yeah, so they located it. I need to check back to my emails, but I know that it was found and it was in one of the retailers' stores. So I'll flick the email around. I remember getting it last year. So.
That's good. The other thing is on the Christmas carols. I think people, elected members who weren't here, I mean, I know Alderman Zuka was, but others, and so was Councillor Harvey, but the discussion about Christmas carols was complex, and there has always been generally a competing event at the Botanic Gardens, which is really the only place that you can host in a really nice environment, a significant number of people outdoors. The council did try one at St David's Park, which I think was okay, and then it also tried one down at Sandy Bay, but it ended up becoming a very fraught debate. And I think the idea of the neighbourhood carols was a way to kind of diffuse that for a while, because there was a private event organised at the Botanic Gardens and it was sort of competing. So I just want to flag that this wasn't sort of like, this has been a big issue before, but I also think that the feedback I get is that people actually do like their neighbourhood carols. I'm not so keen on all the churches getting money to do their day job, but Christmas is such a busy time and people have a whole heap of things on, and sometimes having a few different types of events at different days does suit people. People also often are really happy to stay in the neighbourhood rather than have have challenges with transport and getting in and out of, and you know, these sort of things. And we do actually have a big Christmas event that none of those other cities have, which is our Christmas pageant. So, I mean, we have a big Christmas event. It's just different to other cities which do the carols. And, you know, one of the challenges with Hobart is also we have so much daylight at that time of year. So it just doesn't, it's not quite the same as, you know, Christmas carols in Trafalgar Square where it's all sort of candles and lights and like it is a different sort of vibe. So I'm not saying I hate the idea of a bigger Christmas carols. You know, I think the ones I went to at Botanic Gardens were lovely, but they were in collaboration with Botanic Gardens. I don't think they're really into, they don't want to have more big events these days. So the question is, where do we have these things? And that was the beauty of having a big public open space at Macquarie Point, was where you could have a big, you know, 10,000 people outdoors. We've really got we do have limits on where we can do that. I guess there's the regatta grounds is one option.
Yeah, regatta grounds.
But that's not so...
Sandown Park was the last ones. Yeah. Last couple of events were at Sandown, which wasn't a bad spot apart from parking.
Except for the sea breeze always comes in there. It's bloody freezing. But I guess you get that at regatta grounds.
We just have a few more speakers left on the side, and we've only got about 10 minutes left of the discussion. I've got Alderman Zuko and Alderman Bloomfield, unless they'd like to give speaking rights back to Councillor Kelly, because he hasn't had a chance yet.
Perhaps you should escalate me.
I think we should escalate you, Councillor Kelly. Let's go.
Should we? Yeah, look, I just think it is really easy. We could talk all night about this Christmas stuff, couldn't we? I just think we're really laser focused. I'd be really keen to hear back of a whole reset on this whole thing. I mean, I just sat back and listened. We've heard from the Wiggles to tomatoes to crochet to, you know, all these, you know, noble suggestions, and sometimes they're not bad. I think the community side of things of pushing it out to community was a good attempt, and there's no harm in trying that. We can't get everything right every time, so maybe that does need some refining. The regatta grounds is definitely an area you can have that bit of an amphitheatre feel. It's got a huge area down the bottom. It does have facilities, heaps of parking, so I'd strongly recommend a good focus on that, if that's the philosophy where we're going. Let's not forget what the whole thing's about. It is about Christmas, and let's look at those first 5 letters in that whole thing. And to say for the church, I think it's a bit unfair to say it's not fair the church getting all the money. Well, it is their gig sort of thing, as far as the whole, if you want to boil it down to what the whole thing's about, you know, if you really distill what that's there for, and to say that the Catholic Church can afford to do these sort of things from a certain individual point of view, I don't think it's really fair to say that as well. You could say the same about some of the bigger businesses putting their hands in the pockets as well. I guess what I'm trying to say, this is complex. It is tied. I get that. Perhaps though too, I don't think we should get too beat up on the age of some of these decorations and all that. They're there for the kids really. Kids can't remember from one year to the next, and the next generation come through. Sure, we want to reset that. So I just think this could be fleshed out really well in the report. It's been good to have the discussion tonight, but I'm really keen to get back a guided report of what we can do here, you know, and give us some direction. And the same old every year, year in, year out, doesn't have to be the same. We may have the cycle of a 5-year thing where the focus will be X. Communities might be 1 year and then it's pulled into the regatta grounds, something like that. But the meat of this should be good in what we see in the officer report.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Alderman Zuko.
I just want to add a little bit of background about Sandown Park. There was a push by a certain group of elected members at the time to get the Hobart carols on the national map, and that there was money being poured in, being wasted. Well, we're never going to get onto the national map. That's why we decided to pull the pin on it, because we just kept on putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into something that was never going to get onto the national map. In regards to the trees, and the trees I talk about around the suburbs, wouldn't it be something unique that we planted a tree of different calibre, even an olive pine tree, in every suburb of Hobart, whether it's on private land or council land, so that if the community wanted to decorate it or do something with it, every suburb in Hobart has a tree planted for Christmas and or any other aspect. So maybe in your report you might look at how many suburbs have we got, where could we put them, and it'd be something unique. I don't think any city in this country would have a tree planted for Christmas in each and every suburb. So give that thought, right? And sorry to throw this into the debate. A lot of you are not going to like it, but in 2028 we could have a stadium where we could have Christmas under a roof. I'll let that one go. Let that one go to the keeper. But look, no, that was a joke. I am serious about. Look at
2030 maybe.
2030, whatever. Who cares anymore? I'm over it. I would love that report to come back to say we need. I can't remember how many suburbs we got, but as I said, if I had space on my private land, I would allow it to be put on mine, and I would say there'd be a lot of people that have some prominent sites that may put it on their private land, but for public use. So have a look at it, and that'd be unique. Hobart, first city in Australia to have a Christmas tree in every suburb. There you go.
Alderman Bloom first.
Thank you. 2 points. One was that I grew up actually going to these carols by candlelight, and they were always held at St David's Park. We used to have our little candles and all the rest of it, and it was really distressing to find the day that I could take my children. I couldn't because they'd moved it. And the reason why it was moved, my understanding at the time, was that it was too successful and it was booked out and people couldn't get in, and that's what stopped it. So the site itself became too small. I mean, that's why we had the rotunda. The rotunda was to actually have the carols in it. So that's kind of where that came from, and then they disputed it, and I even funded. I was one of the sponsors for the Lena Valley one, and it wasn't the best. It was difficult, so I'd like to see it come back, but yeah, it'd have to be somewhere bigger, maybe a Gattaca or something like that. But it's really about the camaraderie rather than needing to have trees around us. It's simply you have your children, you have the environment, you have the entertainment and all the rest of it. But the other thing that I really wanted to contribute with was, we talk about no junk for Christmas and all the rest of it, right? But we can actually lead by example in that as well, because we actually do the Christmas wrapping, don't we, right? That's part of what we offer. So why can't we offer some alternatives in that space as well? So we lead by example and say, look, you don't have to use wrapping paper. You know how you kind of get your kids to kind of like recycle and learn, but you also sometimes use tea towels and things like that to wrap it in. Well, there's all different things you can do, right? But I mean, even the newspaper, people used to print on it and stamp it. But the whole point is that we could actually offer some alternative wrapping styles that actually are recyclable and or simply reusable product that means it doesn't go in the bin. And that's simply by showcasing it. But they might not take it up, but at least they're starting to become exposed to it, and kind of that is our role.
Thank you, Alderman Bloomfield. I think we'll move on to 8.3 now. So 8.3 is workshopping the electric vehicle charging infrastructure policy. You get a break from the table. Thank you. I'd like to invite the relevant managers up to the table.
Hello, everybody. Oh, thank you. All right. My name is Alia Blazowski, and I'm the Senior Transport Planner here with the City Transport Group, flanked by the best and brightest. Thank you for your continued attendance for the last item of the evening. We're here to introduce a draft policy on electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and so let's begin. About a year ago, you endorsed the transport strategy, And one of the 13 priorities actions that was to immediately begin was to develop a policy around the council's role in future fuels and future charging infrastructure. And a few months afterward, the 2040 Climate Ready Hobart strategy was also endorsed and also included similar action to develop a policy and partner with government and private sector to support an effective and reliable EV charging network. Supporting that, but a bit separate, was also to transition the city's own fleet to 100% electric by 2030 for its passenger fleet vehicles and by 2035 to its medium and large vehicles. Now, the role of transport is quite important for lowering the community emissions. Transport it contributes half and just over half of Hobart's community emissions. And the transport strategy speaks to all of the potential ways of lowering transport emissions through its intertwined themes of land use planning and transport planning. But what the EV policy touches on is ways that we can reduce this through that first box of fuel efficiency and switching to more fuel efficient vehicles. So what we've done already, about 8 months ago, we began a discovery phase by reaching out directly to multiple local government areas, multiple states and industry players, and conducting a desktop review of policies around Australia that would help us understand what role councils should have. And what we've been finding is that most councils that have had an early stake in the game of EV charging and owning and operating their networks have been transitioning into the role of an enabler and regulator of EV chargers. We also wanted to understand the role of charge point operators. This is that growing industry of private businesses that are building, installing, and helping to maintain EV chargers. Wanting to understand how other councils were locating the chargers that they had and how to support people who cannot charge at home. And also things that the policy should avoid, which we found to be things like giving away electricity for free, blanket on-street EV charging, and also a lack of integration and coordination with your own council. So we wanted to make sure that we were tackling all these things well. We presented to the City Transport Committee in March with this discovery, and then again this month with the draft policy. We've addressed a notice of motion that was handled in March, and we've been having ongoing meetings with our internal stakeholders for continued feedback on the policy as it's been drafted. So the draft policy defines council's role not to be an owner and operator of the public EV chargers, but to be the responsible authority to plan for them, to license the land for the use at council, on council land, to facilitate the market to scale appropriate installation of EV charging infrastructure. It has strategic support for third-party investment, which includes conducting a public procurement process for that EV charging infrastructure on council land. And it's also about being clear and responsive to the community about what they can expect and helping to find information about EV charging here in Hobart. We've also, in the draft policy, put forward a definition for provider's role, where EV charging infrastructure is installed on council land, entering into a license agreement with council, that it'd be understood that they would lead consultation with Tasmania networks. They'd be responsible for that installation, operation, management, maintenance, upgrades, and removal, essentially the whole lifespan of infrastructure, meet minimum operating standards, and share their usage data. We've also outlined locations for public charging infrastructure, and at this point, the policy really looks toward the existing off-street car parking availability that council has management over. So those are our car parks, multi-level car parks within the city, as well as car parks around our parks, sporting, recreation, leisure activity areas, beaches, community facilities.
As well as on street.
We, as a council, we can license land on street, but the next slide, you didn't quite tee me up, but the the policy would encourage developers and homeowners to install their own EV charging infrastructure on their private land. It doesn't set any requirements at this point, or minimum requirements about what that looks like, but just reiterates that any installation would be done to the standards of Australian electrical laws and to our planning needs. Reiterates that charging an EV with a cable that crosses a private property boundary, such as the footpath, is not allowed, and that's due to the state's Electrical Safety Act. And then addresses a potential route for council to support a pilot for curbside or pole-mounted charging. We are in ongoing conversations with Tas Networks about what this can look like. So far around the state, there's not been a council yet that's gone past kind of that exploratory potential conversations with them. And what we're needing to do is that balance that function that we have as a council to look out for the health, welfare, safety of all who live in and travel to Hobart, as well as support the needs of the community. So it's that balancing act to get this right and kind of follow the strategic purpose of this policy. We want to reiterate that this isn't being done in a vacuum. There's been cross-functional collaboration, and many different networks have a role in this EV transition. So there's this municipal policy, but there's also that city fleet transition, which was spoken to in the Climate Ready strategy. There is a current expression of interest out to take on the existing asset at Dunn Place, which is being handled by our infrastructure side, and upcoming education campaigns, which include Electrify Hobart and Climate Ready Hobart, that the Climate Futures side is leading, as well as information that we can keep up to date with the city webpage, such as you see the example there. And the next steps would be to hear from you tonight about any feedback that you have that we may be able to incorporate then into the policy that would go forward to the full council's seeking endorsement on the 25th. Throughout the next year, we'll be mapping priority areas for public EV charging, where we see there being a need or some low-hanging fruit, and continuing that coordination with Tas Networks to develop what that pilot could look like for that on-street style of charging, and continuing to meet internally with the group to move forward the actions that are involved in this EV transition. And with that, I'll leave it for feedback.
Thank you very much. Any discussion from elected members? Lord Mayor?
A couple of questions. Did you kind of get a sense of, did you benchmark what good looks like in terms of how many we should be aiming for? Like, you know, it's a bit like public toilets in the sense of how many should there be available per vehicle in Hobart, or percentage of electric vehicles in Hobart, and which city or cities around Australia has kind of got an adequate or desirable number per number of vehicles. Because the feedback I've had is that it's very light on in Hobart, but maybe that's the case everywhere. But do you have a sense of how many we need to come up to a sort of a modern standard? And is the market able to deliver that? Or in other states, are the state governments putting more money into kind of subsidising private operators to establish? So therefore they're a bit ahead.
The leader appears to be New South Wales in terms of what you might see a state putting forward to help ramp up availability of EV charging. I think nationally, and in Hobart, it's what you might see as an obstacle is people's not being sure that they have as many public charging stations available as would make them comfortable to make that step. Although it's also been stated in EV industry literature that it becomes less of an obstacle once people have more familiarity with it and understand that they really can get by with one charge a week or so, which if you can do that at home is doable. I wish that I had on the tip of my tongue the number that you mentioned, because there is an industry standard about what to aim for. Do you have a number that? So we can get back to you with that. That wasn't one of the things that I thought to come prepared with.
It is an interesting one though. So most people do. It's a chicken and egg, right? So most people have them charge at home, but most people can. But then you buy them, you're more likely to buy them because you can charge them at home. So it's then what's our role? That's what we're trying to make it really clear as council. What is our role in this space?
Yeah.
And that's why we don't want to be a blocker. We want to be a facilitator.
Yeah.
Provide for, but I guess that's what we probably don't want to be owning the infrastructure. We want to be regulating and facilitating.
But also, if there's a real problem, like there's a market barrier here, we need to know so we can call it out. Like if we need to say to the state government, look, there just aren't the same number of operators in Tasmania, you know, we're not getting approached, we're doing all the right things, but no one's coming to us wanting to set them up. You know, there's a market failure.
Get these numbers and find out.
Yeah, or is there, do we know that there is sufficient private operators interested in setting up in Tassie?
There is, yeah, we are doing work with the community area.
And who are they? Like, who are the main players these days?
We just ran the tender for the EV charge over replacement and dump place, and that tender hasn't, we haven't finalised it yet, but we have a lot of support from the private sector willing to take that over that charges, so demonstrate to us there's a lot of interest in the market.
Even Hobart, where it's doubling, EV purchases are doubling each year over the last few years, so that's encouraging as well. So people are, you know, is that happening fast enough? Well, that's pretty strong compared to other parts of Australia, so we're doing pretty well. Yeah.
But it's good that there are players that are interested, and they're not going to. There's competition in
That's
Tassie,
right. Yeah.
and they all have different pricing points, presumably, do they?
I think slightly different products offerings too, but ultimately to do the same thing.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Chair. Is there a need to work with the network for locations? Like you can't just put electric chargers anywhere. You have to. Is that still the case? That they can only go in certain locations where there's capacity in the system to accommodate it?
There is a need to work with the network. It's not completely limiting to just a few spots around, but Tas Networks has recently launched a map that is available to the public, but specifically of interest probably to councils and to those EV providers, EV charging providers, that shows where their transmission transformers are located, and you can zoom around and find what is kind of already reaching capacity and what already has capacity. So the ideal when we talk about mapping priority areas this year is to essentially work with Tas Networks and add a layer of our own onto their existing map that we can utilise that would show that council land where it marries up to the infrastructure, the Tas Networks infrastructure that is available, and that fits with the locations that we would see could use a boost in having that extra availability of public charging.
And that would generally be the case where they can go, but who would take responsibility if you wanted to service other areas, if there are other suburbs where there wasn't capacity? Would Tas Networks go, oh, don't worry, we'll just improve the capacity in these areas, or would that be a council cost? You know, like say West Hobart.
We wouldn't anticipate it be council.
Yeah.
No. You'd have to, and if there's demand there, and they could see a demand there, and there were a negotiation with the company who thought there was, so that would be something Tas Networks and an operator would discuss. We would be the facilitator of this discussion.
Okay. So the objective is for us not to own any of this stuff?
That's correct.
Yep, and what about costs to council, or is there any fee like the scooter group were paying to have scooters in Hobart? Would we be charging a fee to have EV chargers in our streets?
Oh, look, it's certainly an opportunity to explore that and what that would look like.
You can probably talk more to the current example, done place, it's probably the most.
Done place example, that one, as I said, hasn't been good yet, but all the proponents were talking about paying revenue to council for the use of the land effectively. Own and operate, and then they take over the power meter or the power supply.
And the parking fee from it? They're two separate things?
You often build the parking, but again, different models, you can build the parking fee into the charge fee, that's normally probably what most people do.
Right, Alderman Suko.
All I was going to say, like, you know, you're talking about the Dunn Street car park, obviously you put out expressions of interest. I was going to say, why don't we look at putting out expressions of interest for other suburbs, but also incentivise it to have it installed. In other words, give them a period of time where they have the rental period for a free period of time, blah blah blah, and all this and that. That way, they're, you know, if there is that suburb but there's nothing around there, and you incentivise the expression of interest to get one in there for a period of time, say 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, they don't pay rent or something like that. It's not costing us anything, but we're getting the EV into an area where we want it. We want it. So, you know, sometimes we look at things and go, we don't have to put our hands in our pockets. All we're going to do is provide the space and the access to it, right? Like, you know, the Dunn Street car park, North Hobart car park. We've got Lefroy. You know, we've got car parks all over the place, and they don't necessarily have to be car parks. Like in Lenna Valley, there could be one of the side streets there that we dedicate a car spot at one of the side streets specifically for an EV charger, right? I'm just talking about the main drag of Lenna Valley where the cafes are. You wouldn't want to put it there, but just round the corner, you could. It doesn't yet.
That's the plan. After we've finished the dump place charging, the intention is to look at the other EV charging stations that we own and do the same EOI process. So as those ones reach in their life, we pass them over to the private sector.
So why don't you again, the same as the trees before, why don't you say, right, we want to target these areas, right, and even target the spots, but potentially the spots where you can put them where it doesn't affect business or it doesn't affect a neighbour or it doesn't affect them. That you can find the spots. They're available. So have a look at that and then come to us with a report and say, right, we've got a report here, we're looking at that spot in North Hobart, that spot in South Hobart, these spots here and whatever have you, and we can look at it all at once and go, oh, great. Again, don't let it affect other people, that's all I'm trying to get at. Like one car park in Lefroy doesn't matter, right? But you don't want to put it outside the main cafe in Lenna Valley because he'll kill you, you understand what I mean? So hopefully you get the drift.
Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, I think a point we're not looking at here closely, the first point is it's a fact that most people charge from home, right? It's a fact. I accept that Hobart doesn't have driveways for every house because of their old heritage style stuff and all that, but it's not the showstopper of that. The big thing here is that, and I noticed down Dunn Place, this is for tourism. We're a capital city and it's the tourists that really need to get the charging, from what I see. If you look at all the stats on that, I think that's what the bottom line statistic would say. So we're just going to be a little bit careful here, and I think you should flesh this out a bit deeper in your statistics of who needs the charging. The daily commuters, being Hobart, being a short commute typically, and having the ability to charge at home and all that. We're just going to be careful that we're not going down the road here setting up this big expensive system for tourists. I know it can be a philosophical argument. There's that argument, we're providing fuel for vehicles, aren't we, at the end of the day? And as this technology emerges and numbers are doubling all the time, there comes a tipping point here, well, where do we stop here in this whole process, you know? More and more hotels are putting them in, I notice, and all that, but I think, without prattling on too much more, have a look at those stats as to who actually needs them. Is it really our commuters that are coming into the city, or is it purely the tourists and all that? I'm not saying that diminishes them, like, sure, they need to be powered up, but In CBD, I don't know.
Lovely.
Just wondering whether the policy should also address the issues of people parking in EV spaces when they're not charging their car, and the kind of protocols around when you finish you charge, you actually have to leave.
Yeah,
Like,
do you mean EVs that are parking there for too
No,
long, or
or not.
non-EVs at all?
It can be non-EVs, but
Both.
it can also be EVs that park there, do the full charge, but then sit there for another 2 hours. So how do we kind of regulate that, if we can regulate that? I think in South Australia they changed the parking laws
And the rate.
at the state level,
Yeah. $20
the
an
road
hour,
rules.
yeah.
So maybe I think we might have to get the state government to do it, which basically just says once you charge your car, you have to move on, or if you're in a normal car, you're not to park in a EV charging car park. But maybe we can do it at the city level. I just don't know. But I think
non-EVs in a bay that we can do designated signage, the long stay.
I don't know. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
we'll look into
for
that.
the policy, should it deal with some of
Address
that?
yeah.
Because some of that, I guess, what would you call it? Sort of the etiquette of.
It's already done, Lord Mayor. I think it's $23 an hour if you park in the Dunn Street car park and don't leave.
I know, but I hear you do hear complaints about people saying that in our council car parks, people are parked in EV spots and aren't EVs.
But we set the rates for our car parking, so we could make it whatever we feel like.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it should be in the policy. Yeah.
We'll address it.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you. A couple of things, just picking off the one that Lord Mayor has just raised. I would assume that there would be a couple of business models that the private sector would provide for this, where if you're not actually plugged into the machine, you can't park there, EV or not, and that would include. I'm certain that the private enterprise would be providing app-based communication to the end user to say your charge is complete. I'm pretty certain of that. So they'll get a ping on their phone saying your charge is out, and we can maybe tap into that as an organisation to know if they're just running back and they'll be there in 5 minutes, but if they've been off the charge for 15 minutes, we can probably see that on the infrastructure and book them for overstaying. So I think there's technological based solutions that we can control. It's not a state government incentive. The two questions that I have, one is how does this policy speak to how we're going to manage EV charging in our commercial car parks, in our multi-storey car parks?
Yeah. So as described by they're the next cabs up the rank as far as so the first one is Dunn Place, but from there we'll move to the same infrastructure in multi-stories and look to regulate that the same way as Dunn Place.
Yeah, so there's obviously an opportunity to put EOIs out for our car parks, dependent on the capacity of the network in the local area for what type of charging. And I don't know, do we fully understand demand metrics for ultra fast, super fast, and like conventional slow charging and what people want? Because I think there is a market for people that are happy to charge all day, like the people that have in Argyle Street have a permanent spot, the doctors at the hospital are there for 8 hours, but they're happy to go super slow, which we can install easily, or a third party can install easily. Do we fully understand those metrics of demand?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No. We also, just to sort of take a step back, we've got to be careful what our role is too. So we've got to be careful not to over-invest in this space too, because in 5, 8, 10 years time, the same way you go fill up your bowser, is that how you're going to be filling up on?
Yeah, look,
so
absolutely.
You can't overcook.
No, I'm saying for the private providers to pay for us to use our multi-storey car parks.
Yeah, which we are doing.
So we go out for an EOI for Argyle Street and we say you can use whatever the grid, find out what our capacity is in the grid, and then they can decide, the market can decide, cool, we've got this capacity in the grid, so we'll put in 3 superchargers, we'll put in 150 slow chargers, but it's on them to make that decision because we don't know.
And the policy is explicitly actually supposed to be flexible in the type of charging, noting that depending on the site locations, you might have a different type of charging to cater for. And that was actually a tip that we heard from EV solutions provider is that they were unable to apply for funding in New South Wales because what they were hoping to do was slow charging to help at multi-family housing. And at the time, New South Wales was really prioritising super fast and fast charging. So just be cognizant that we might have at some point an opportunity to push forward something that's smart but slow, or an opportunity from the state that's fast and we like.
I'd like to leave that up to the market for what they can do, because they'll have the best idea of what's going to work best for them. The other component was, I understand from an infrastructure provision perspective, there's two elements, or two options. There's the kind of operating business on the footpath perspective, which is essentially the EV company has to come in, or the charging company has to come in and do all of the headworks, and then we charge them a fee to operate off our footpath. But there is another model where we do the in-ground stuff, make sure they've got adequate power supplies, and then we still lease off the footpath, but they're also essentially leasing that secondary bit of infrastructure. They come and bolt their charger in, but that you can charge high. There's very different rates for what the private entities are willing to charge, depending on what's in the ground. Have we done any work in that space?
So we do put in new works in TasNetworks.
Yeah.
So we sort of see it slightly differently. So you wouldn't be bolting on our footpath, you'd be bolting on the TasNetworks infrastructure.
Oh, sorry, I should say it for super fast chargers and for the done place style. Yeah, that there's the two different models where they have to pay, and then they might only pay us $200 a month or something for the footpath because they've just spent $35,000 to put the infrastructure in the ground to support their charger. Yeah. But if we put that infrastructure in the ground, they'll pay us $1,000 a month. Yeah, which is commercial.
Yeah. I'm not sure. You'd want to be in that space because there is significant cost.
Yeah, it'd be good to understand I'm not sure we want to be in that space either, but it'd be good to understand the finances a little bit better, whether or not it is worth us making some of the investment into this infrastructure, but not holding all of the risk over.
I think because it's changing so fast, we're really mindful of that. So anything you do needs to be of longevity. Yeah. So that's what the main, while we wouldn't sort of invest significant money, but in 5 years, the whole game's changed, and now we're all charged. We don't know, so it's not like that's the answer, but we just don't know.
The final element is that we have to charge a fee. It shouldn't be a people coming to us and saying, "Oh, we're very happy to pay a fee." We should be, these are businesses operating on footpath, and they should be paying accordingly because they're quite profitable businesses, particularly working out that articulation with the parking fee, which should probably just be built into a single fee for the operator, so they take a whole lot as the operator and can charge whatever they like per hour to do that. That's it.
Any other discussion on the item?
Can I just ask, just around our own fleet, will that come to us as well at some stage?
Well, we can provide it. Certainly it came to executive in terms of how we're going to manage that internally. We're certainly happy to make that available, so it's not a problem.
Yeah, because I guess I'm just keen to make sure that we're thinking innovatively about just cars, council cars generally, like rather than just sort of, like I understand that there's talk of providing charging upgrades at people's homes.
Yeah, that's
and I think I'd rather sort of go, well, are we doing our car fleet in the modern way, full stop? Because I know some councils have gone to novated leases where you just choose your car and you get a discount on your against your salary, and it's kind of your business what you choose, and then there's a pool of cars that just stay in the at the council all the time, and they get used during the day but they don't get taken home. And like I would hate us to sort of invest in 20 upgrades of council staff's homes for EV charging, when actually it might be a good time for us just to go, what's the best model for cars?
We've certainly looked at that. I mean, novated leasing is not new. I mean, it's never been that effective, but anyway, it's not a new thing. So maybe we'll bring our fleet manager to come and do a workshop with council around the policy that came to executive last week.
Yeah, just want to be,
Yeah.
again, this isn't really about EV, it's just that the fact of we may be investing in this brings it to the fore
Yeah.
for me is, are we sort of looking at best practice around the country in terms of lighter levels of investment in
Yeah.
fleets, not sort of buying lots of cars that sort of, maybe, you know, maybe we're buying more than we need, I don't know, and maybe we give it a little bit more responsibility to people to do these kind of leases and choose what they like and deduct, I don't know, you know, like I just...
Yeah, no, I
just
hear what
wanna
you're
know.
saying. Again, we have spent a fair bit of time examining it from an organisational perspective, but so I think it would be, we can do some work with you on it.
There are two parts to it. One is what we do with our fleet and things.
With the big things, yeah.
That's fine, so we've got a position on that, that's great. Then there's a full review of our fleet as well at the same time. So all those things we're talking about, all part of it. So what do we need, and what should we have, taking into account the fact that we'll have future building changes as well, what we'd like to actually have in this space, or we need to actually get our work done. So that should be a minimum. So I think all those types of things are under consideration. But we can come to you.
Yeah, I think we'll organise for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not sort of our business, but I know that it's...
No, I think
it ends up being quite a big budget
it is.
part of any council, and I just want to make sure we're really looking at what's happening in councils and fleet management generally.
Yep. Yep.
Excellent. Let's move on to 8.4. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I don't expect to spend a lot of time. I just wanted to be able to get this policy in front of the council. So effectively, we're required under the Local Government Act to have a new elected member dispute resolution policy in place by 10th of September. So they've become more specific under the regulations in terms of what we need to include in our dispute resolution policy, and so our policy doesn't comply as it currently stands. The Local Government Association has developed a model policy for the sector. They've worked with the Local Government Office to develop that. The desire is for, I guess, council dispute resolution processes to minimise the number of matters that are escalating to code of conduct complaints. So that's the way this is written, is to make the process more thorough, with the hope that issues are able to be dealt with internally as opposed to externally. And so to that effect, they've created, and this is the bigger difference between our process and what this would be, is a role for a dispute resolution advisor. So that a dispute resolution advisor is an external person to the council who would undertake the dispute resolution process with the parties that are in the dispute. And so the Local Government Association have established a register of dispute resolution advisors, so qualified people are able to put their hand up to be on that the panel, and then they're able to support local government within Tasmania, and effectively that advisor would bring the parties together to conduct a facilitated discussion or a mediation and just work through the process. Determine the appropriate resolution process, so that could be, a commitment to changing behaviours, a commitment to ceasing behaviour, apology, counselling, undertaking further development, or that the council has to review a policy or a procedure. So it's quite regimented in terms of what we need to be doing. There's set some maximum time frames, so we're unlike the Code of Conduct complaints, we're required under the Act to have matters dealt with within 3 months, which is quite a good thing in terms of resolving that. We still have our dispute resolution officer, who is the staff member responsible for any referral off to the Code of Conduct if it gets to that. But certainly the intention is to try and see this policy is more able to deal with those issues without it being, sent to that external body. So really just wanted to get this in front of you for consideration before it comes to councils.
Any discussion on the item?
Good amendments, good updates, and they're in line with the standards that have been, or suggested by the State Office.
Yes, well they've been suggested by us and they'll be adopted into the model policy.
What's the,
Councillor Possett?
thank you. What's the cost of the How does the cost differ between this and the code of conduct existing processes? And if we do wind up with one that gets referred on, have we not just doubled our costs?
Oh, there's potential for that if they do get referred on. Obviously, you can't. These are intended to be a, an outcomes based. But you can't take away someone's legal right to lodge a code of conduct. So there could be some double up on that. At times we do bring in mediators for our current process. So that occurs now. So difficult to provide you a cost estimate for it though.
But through your chair,
Councillor
mediation can be done in-house as well,
Correct.
can't
Yeah.
it? I think it's important that's really looked at a bit.
Yeah, well, under this process, you would always call in the dispute resolution advisor if this policy gets enacted. So that would be someone independent to come in.
But can't we still?
Not if this policy gets enacted. Maybe short of again, there's always other things that can come up. I mean, informal dispute resolution, but as soon as it's enacted, I think you would follow into the dispute resolution advisor being brought into it.
Alderman Birdfield.
Just curious, not that we had much to do at all with code of conduct stuff, but I noticed that there was like this first point where you need to do mediation, and both parties have the right to refuse, I've noted. But I question whether that in its own right is robust enough at this stage, because honestly, everyone here probably would have a point of view of this, and I'd be really interested to know what that would be, because it's like it shouldn't be that you have the right to easily refuse. It should be that you have to have a very justifiable position why you would refuse. Does that make sense? It's a little bit like saying I'm sick, but I would say, but you need a medical certificate. If you want to refuse mediation, I actually think there should be a strong reason, because I think a lot of the code of conducts appear to fly into code of conduct process because I'm seeing a lot of people just refusing mediation, and I just think that should happen, even though I know it's horrible and it's difficult, but you know what I mean? It's too easy to fly past that, I just think.
Yeah.
And I know everyone gets really angry with it, but I actually think it should be really first and foremost.
Yeah. So it is required that you undertake the dispute resolution process prior to lodging initiating a code of conduct complaint. But like you say, you are able to opt out of that at the moment, and so we are seeking to strengthen that so that hopefully this becomes the means with which disputes are resolved, so that we are able to handle our
But you can still do that at a mediation at this point in time.
Well, not without a medical certificate in terms of the...
Oh, okay, so it is robust enough to say.
Well, that's something that our council has suggested based on what we've experienced. But like I said to Councillor Purcell, you still got the right to go down the code of conduct route if that's what you choose. But the idea behind this with the Local Government Association is this is becoming more robust, and hopefully with the process more people are accepting the outcome so that you are able to deal with it in-house.
Yeah, no, as I said, I'm not trying to be horrible about it, but I just honestly think that should be a very strong first position, because it reflects what else happens outside in the real world.
Well, yeah, with discrimination, you have to do mediation. You don't get any choice, and a lot of the stuff in the magistrates' courts too. You don't have any choice. So it's a pity it isn't compulsory.
What would be the can the outcome result in any form of sanctions?
Well, at this stage, no. We can be recommending professional development, counselling, apologies, commitment to cease the behaviour, but in terms of
that's not
sanctions,
not binding.
No. Well, no. Obviously, any policy is binding to the extent as the organisation and individuals will abide by it. So it cannot extend to suspensions or that type of that sanction. So that's the limit of it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like some of this is, like, it's well-meaning and well-intentioned and meant to save us money and process and avoid code of conducts, but a lot of the code of conducts that have been processed in this term have related to behaviour that is an explicit breach of policy, and I just don't see, and then like a failure for people to go on and do what they were told after code of conduct or make a mockery of the code of conduct decision. I'm just not, I know that we're a very different council, this council, compared to other councils in Tasmania for a number of reasons, but I'm just not sure if this is futile.
It's required though.
Yeah, so we are required to have the policy in place. You are required to engage in it before you're able to lodge a code of conduct. It's just that there are loopholes and there are, so the policy has been written for all local government. I appreciate that we've tested and tried the current policy, but as I say, we need to have a system in place. I do think that this does offer an opportunity because of the external nature of it, because of I guess not sanctions so much as the means of being able to resolve are there. I think are singled out or spelled out. I do think there's opportunity to resolve more things internally. Some you won't.
Alderman Bloomfield?
I'm sorry, I was just going to add too, if it's any comfort, my expectation with this would be that if you went through a robust position on that, everything that happens in that piece would actually form part of your code of conduct as well. So it wouldn't be lost, it wouldn't be wasted. It would actually help form your basis and your arguments and everything else, whichever way those fell. That's how I
Well, the advisor provides a report.
Yeah,
which
so
then
it
goes.
would actually help firm up. Yeah, but yeah, I think the important thing is though that for the smaller items, you'd like to think it would actually do something positive.
Any other comments or discussion? All right, thank you, CEO.
No worries.
Item 9, responses to questions without notice. Would someone like to move that? Moved by Alderman Bloomfield. Off with that. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. One more thing before closed. Questions without notice. Item 10. Any questions without notice this evening?
I just wanted a follow-up question. Thank you so much for supplying the information on the grants and so forth, because as I said, I was trying to work out how I could argue back to the government to try and get some further funding. The data has been supplied inside closed, mostly because I just didn't want to ask it publicly, but the information now supplied currently I believe has status of being confidential. But given it's based on public data and could be extrapolated publicly, am I able to utilise that data to formulate anything else I want to do or not?
Not if it's provided in close. If the question is, are we able to look at being able to structure it so it can be publicly released, then we can have a look at that.
Would you mind? Is that all right? Sorry.
I would need to have a look, yeah. So.
I don't believe there's anything identified now. I just didn't want to ask it publicly, that was all. I didn't believe it was actually confidential. It's basically just saying what were the grants.
Yeah, this isn't closed though, so yeah.
Oh.
No, we haven't moved to close yet.
Oh, God.
No, that was just questions
Sorry.
without notice.
Yeah.
That's okay. Any other questions without notice? Councillor Harvey?
Yep, this one's for David. How you going? So, the other day we were informed that at that waste meeting that compostable packaging shouldn't go in the FOGO bin because of the potential to contain PFAS. I'm just wondering, and I've already checked this, I know the answer, but you can just test it here. With compostable dog poo bags, are we encouraging people to put them into the FOGO bin or in the rubbish bin? Where's Karen? She might have a go at this too.
At the moment, it's going in the FOGO bin as I understand it.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one because while it's going there, while it's accepted as FOGO, that's probably fine. Some other councils, I think what was gone up was had compostable dog food bags rather than going into your garbage bin, landfill, which wasn't necessarily a great outcome. So at this stage, as far as I know, apart from what they actually said at the meeting, there's nothing that's hard and fast that's actually come down in terms of saying, I must not put
Well, our ones, so there's no conversation here, you should warn me. There's, the compostable dog poo bags don't have PFAS. I've already checked that with them. I just wanted to make sure it's kosher to stick them into the green
Yes,
bin.
as far as I know, that's right. So not all of them starting to say, and it's quite tricky to actually find out whether or not that's actually the case or not. So we did exactly the same thing at Kimberley, went around the various different manufacturers and said, can you actually categorically say to us they didn't have PFAS in there? It was very difficult to get an answer out of the manufacturers. As far as I know, the ones that we've actually used here don't and are safely going to FOGO. Whether or not the processes at some stage or the regulators at some stage turn around and say, no, we don't accept them. I know New South Wales, for example, has made a ruling that they don't accept that in their FOGO processing for different reasons, not necessarily for the packaging, but more for the dog food. But our jurisdiction hasn't at this stage. So it'll be a bit of a wait and see, I think.
And the follow-up,
Another question, Councillor Harvey?
based on this, there's about 1 million dog poo bags just in Hobart. And if every dog shits 15 grams, you can work it out, Michael, you're the mathematician here. Those hundreds of tonnes, or not 100 tonnes, those tonnes potentially could be diverted from landfill by encouraging people to put it in their FOGO or take them home to put it in their FOGO. Should we, the question is, should we be looking at a program, Neil, you're the dog guy, to focus on getting dog poo bags out of all the other bins and put them into the special dog poo bins? Is it a thing that we're aware of? Neil, you're the expert. We'll go to Neil now.
People do take them home though.
They do, but there's still 1 million bags that get used in Hobart per year. You done the maths yet?
You going to take that on notice, Neil?
Close.
Right, let's move to close.
You've got to do a few demo bags to see what the average weight is.
Right, can someone move us into closed, please? Thank you, Lord Mayor. Moved into closed.